Hello and welcome to the Third Age Babylon 5 podcast, to a very special feature for our Christmas season. As you can see, today we are only two Europeans who were too young to see the show when it first aired. We respectively watched the show for the first time and for the upteenth time. Layla unfortunately couldn't join us today because it is winter, it is cold, so she got a little bit sick and couldn't be with us. So we are of course going to give her a little bit of time and space in the next recording to talk about everything that comes up today that she also might want to give a few thoughts on. Is that decent enough?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. Because it's such a special occasion, we are going to give you 2 episodes for the price of 1. We are going to talk about both Babylon Squared and The Quality of Mercy. But to make sure things don't get so confused, there is going to be sort of an intermission in the middle where we clearly distinguish the discussion about the episode 20 and episode 21. As usual, we start with an introduction question, and given the occasion, our introduction question is going to be, what are your favorite Christmas traditions, if you have any? So, what are yours, Meike?
Yeah, well, I have to admit, over the time, I turned a bit into not exactly a Grinch, but Christmas is not as special as it used to be, because it feels just, way too much capitalistic for me, and I don't really have, obviously, as I stated in a lot of our episodes, not really a religious hinge on these things, so it's not like a Christmas tradition in the sense of Christmas for me, but I really love it to put out a few lights, because it's the dark season of the year, a bit of depressive state that can creep up to you, and therefore I really like it when you put lights in your home and a bit outside, because if you go for a walk or just for shopping or anything like this, everything seems brighter just because there's a bit of a light in the darkness.
I really like this as a tradition, and it reminds me of going on holidays in Sweden back in the day, because there it's a big thing. It's winter, everything is dark, so having small lights in the windows and stuff is just completely unrelated to Christmas, more of a thing. So definitely a nice tradition to have. For me, it's going to Christmas markets, which is very Christmassy. Although I always wish it wasn't associated with Christmas so much. And it's becoming a little bit more that we have more markets that aren't specifically about Christmas, that are going a little bit longer until New Year's and stuff like that, because I think it's so nice to see the old towns and sometimes like the parks around castles and stuff come to life with all these little like huts and booths where people sell things and you can get something to eat, to drink and stuff. And yeah, it's just something that I miss for the rest of the year, where all the inner cities and stuff feel like they're much more just places you run through and maybe go to a shop, but you don't really spend time there. And this is like, for this season specifically, always nice to have a place to stay actually when you're going to the city. So yeah, that's what I really enjoy.
Well, I have to admit, I like Christmas markets too, but in a different sense, because there are a few Christmas markets that are either smaller or a special kind of. I know exactly when I'm saying this that you know what I'm talking about, because for those listening, we went to the same university, and there is in this city a big Christmas market with a little, well, you could say it's a side Christmas market with a medieval theme, and it's really cozy to go there because there's no big bustling from people, just a few huts with medieval themed things to eat, to drink, and other things to buy, even with some medieval styled music. And that's where I think, that's kind of cute and nice to spend some time there.
It is very nicely there. It's this old little church, and it's like cordoned off in every direction. It's very nice. Which actually reminds me, I recently stumbled across a few old screenshots and such of the 1980s Excalibur movie again. And yeah, if if we ever veer away from science fiction and talk about some fantasy installments, we will get a lot into our both, I think, shared love for medieval markets and stuff like that. That's a whole different genre that we can dive into at some point.
Totally.
But okay, I think as far as it goes, this puts us into a little bit of a Christmassy mood, and we can, I think, especially appreciate that you found an ugly Christmas sweater to to wear for this one, even though it's not your favorite season. And let's talk a little bit about, well, we will start today with Babylon Squared, which is a fairly momentous episode. I feel like it's nice that we get to this on a Christmas day. It might be a great gift for a bunch of listeners eagerly waiting, because we unravel one of the first big mysteries that we learned about in Babylon 5, which is the fate of Babylon 4, what happens to the immediate predecessor of the station. And, well, this is what most of the episode revolves around, as we receive a distress call from said station, and it looks like the crew isn't even aware of what really happened to them, that they seem to have traveled through time in some capacity. And this opens up the big time travel plot of Babylon 5 that we spend most of the episode with. But the fate of Babylon 4 is not the only thing that this episode revolves around. There is also big events happening on the Minbari side of things, as Dylan is called away from Babylon 5 and offered what seems to be like the highest position in Minbari society. And given what we've learned recently where Minbari society is headed, that's certainly quite interesting. So, as usual, we will start with some first impressions, and I'm very curious because, yeah, this is a little bit of a change of pace for Babylon 5, I feel like. So, how did you get on with this episode, Meike?
I have to say I was a bit sad because nothing in this episode really surprised me.
Oh.
I'm really sorry there. But yeah, the things were way too obvious for me. What will come next? I mean, there's this scouter sent out to go check some weird signals, and when the scouter arrives, you have this undistinguished thing appearing. The first blink, I was sitting there, is this some sort of squid? And the next blink, oh yeah, that's a Babylon station. We have Babylon. We finally found Babylon 4. And yeah, that was far too quick for me and far too easy to see at this moment, which kind of made it a bit sad for me because it just was so obvious there. And yeah, it honestly, it doesn't feel like much of a mystery, or it's maybe it's because it's not a complex thing happening there. It feels rather simple, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And how it's unraveled what is happening there is also rather easy. So yeah, that wasn't really my thing there. And on the other hand, the big announced, the one that this alien guy, what was his name?
Zfas.
Yeah, the moment the person appeared in this, even though it was a full covering suit, was like, okay, that's Sinclair. I'm certain that's Sinclair. And then at the end of the episode, oh yeah, it's Sinclair, a bit older, but and with some interesting scar on the face. But yeah, it's Sinclair. So no surprise there again. Yeah, I honestly, I would be interested to know how much of a surprise this was in the 90s for the people who watched this first, and also in general what others, of how it feels to others, because I think, or at least I feel a bit like my literature studies is ruining the experience kind of there, because yeah, my brain is just trained to analyze everything in plot structure and everything like that. So I'm really interested to see, is it just me who has this problem, or is it generally speaking that there are a lot of people saying, hey, I see these 20 miles coming. So
I mean, that sounds like a pretty good discussion question for our lurkers out there, because I'm pretty sure we have some people there that might have seen the show for the first time and still remember how it felt like back in the 90s. So maybe they can write a few comments for us and tell us how exactly that felt. Because personally, I'm probably not the best person to ask about this experience, because for me, the problem is that I just really don't care for time travel stories at all. It's one of my continuing banes with watching any kind of Star Trek. There's so many instances where time travel stories occur, and even Star Trek 4, the beautiful kidnapping of whales and such. It's a really fun movie, but as a time travel story, it just doesn't appeal to me like at all, which is a shame that we don't have Layla with us, because she got me to watch a lot of Doctor Who. So you can imagine with this sort of disposition how many annoying comments I had to that until I eventually came around on that show.
Well, I have to say, I also watched a lot of Doctor Who, but it never felt to me like the usual kind of time travel, because a doctor himself said about time, it's a wobbly, timey-wimey.
A lot of timey-wimey stuff, yes.
Yeah, and therefore it doesn't feel like this usual theme of, if we travel in time, some things change or some things are unchangeable. And on the other part, it didn't feel like something directly linked to classics like The Time Machine.
Yeah.
Therefore, it was different enough for me in structure, and the time traveling part wasn't so obvious or not like the main theme there. Therefore, I could easily ignore this. Even here, it's not that big of a thing, because obviously there's no direct interaction and changing stuff, and the usual problems, at least it's not pronounced that heavy, even you have this last comment in the episode. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not really sure what I wanted to say, but
I think it speaks very much to how I feel about this episode, where I'm usually not a big fan of time travel stories. That being said, the way this episode handles it, I'm kind of fine with, because it doesn't get hung up on, oh my god, this is the very first time our viewers have heard about the grandfather paradox, and now that's a very exciting plot beat. Like, luckily we kind of move around that. I also can imagine that, as a mystery box, this isn't really the biggest mystery to uncover, especially for somebody like you. On the other hand, I am kind of curious, once we will get to the end of the discussion, how many open questions there might be or might not be. Like, if all of this feels very much resolved in your mind, then I'm very curious of what these resolutions look like. But maybe let's start with the beginning of this plot and talk maybe a little bit about how this entire thing starts. Because before we go into any of the grand time traveling things, there is a really beautiful scene when it comes to breakfast time on the station, and I kind of like how it actually fits into the time travel story of them messing with her perception of time. So did this work? Did this recall some of the sitcom energy of Babylon 5 for you?
On one hand, yes. On the other, it just I loved the energy between the three, which was just a funny thing to do, just to begin the episode and give it a bit more, a light start, but also show the dynamics between the three and on which level they are intend to interact with each other, if they have the time with it. And well, the last thing, obviously, I really loved it when Ivano was screaming,
"Yes,
Garibaldi!" And that was I really loved that.
I'm also a big fan of this scene, especially because it's sort of a light-hearted continuation of something that we've known. We know that Ivanova doesn't sleep particularly well, and this very much feels like other people are aware of that, and they have their own ways of dealing with this, and having this little banter, these little interactions is part of that, and I just really enjoy that these things are something that don't just exist in the background for certain plots, but they're just continuously a thing for this character. And yeah, Ivanova is both very fun but dangerous to mess with, I think is very true to her character here.
Though Sinclair got really lucky away there, considering how much she contributed to this.
Yes.
Which was also quite funny to see because, I mean, he has this side where he is a bit likes to mess with people, but I don't feel we haven't seen this kind of playful, funny side with his colleagues up until now. And I think that gave him also a bit more a character trait there.
Yeah, I think so far the only time we've seen Sinclair off duty has been like him sitting tensely in a chair listening to an audiobook and kind of sitting there, I'm going to relax now until the next emergency call comes in. So him actually like unwinding a little bit. Yeah, I don't think this is something that happens very often to them. So no, that was very, very nice to see. You already mentioned the scout pilot who meets this very unfortunate fate. I do think it's kind of fitting for the Babylon 5 universe to introduce yet another thing, that this is a universe that is actually kind of dangerous to fly around in, and like things like such a weird time rift can exist. Like I'm not in the camp of trying to make Babylon 5 has stolen from Deep Space Nine or the other way around. It's just these are two very big science fiction franchises, and I find it interesting that, Star Trek is all about going out there, exploring and things like that. And here in Babylon 5, it's treated much more like something somebody has to go out there and patrol, because otherwise raiders might come. And if you run into a weird space phenomenon, it's not this like scientific wondrous discovery. No, it's most likely just going to kill you, and it's very unfortunate for you. So yeah, I feel bad for unnamed pilot number 27, but I do like actually how much it sets up the fact that going on these missions is dangerous, which is something that Sinclair actually acknowledges a little bit later on.
Yes and no.
Yes and no, okay.
First, I like this idea of the dangerous universe, the dangerous space, because, well, there's a lot of things you will cross paths with that is dangerous, and also gives at the same time a reason why we don't have that much people or humans running around in space and randomly looking for the next best new scientific thing to find, because it is dangerous and humans don't have this much of experience in this regards. Which is also why it is so, let's say, limited to Babylon 5, and not like, it kind of feels like you get this for a change of path or a bit of fresh air in the plot to make it a bit more diverse, but it feels, so much better than the holodeck episodes of Star Trek.
Yeah, well, those aren't exactly the shining examples of space exploration over there.
Yeah. And, well, on the other hand, yes, Sinclair acknowledges that it is dangerous, but he is again the one who is going out. I mean, okay, he has Garibaldi with him. Mm-hmm. He has the security guy with him. But, then at the critical point, he's like, okay, we go in first, everyone else is staying out here, we check it and tell you if it's safe to come in. Like, what the hell? Why? You are the commander of Babylon 5. Why are you doing the most dangerous thing there? I wanted to give him a beating again when this happened.
He does exhibit his heroics a lot again in this episode, which is especially not helpful, because this is where also you get immediately feeling, okay, if there is going to be a prophecy about the one, Sinclair is going to at least try to be the one, because if there is something like, if there is a way to get lost in the time rift, who is going to jump in there first? It's probably going to be him. That makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, well, it's like this. Oh, there's this shiny blinking thing. Sinclair goes in. Oh, what is this? Let me have check it. And everything is no, don't go there. That's dangerous. It's perfectly fine. I will survive this.
Yeah, it is a little bit of that, and what makes this even stronger in this episode for me is that there is so very clearly just a complete disregard for his own life in there. Like it's very much an unhealthy behavior here, because when I talked about earlier a little bit about him acknowledging the danger of this, is when he asks anybody else to go in there, when he puts together the mission team and talks to all the pilots, then he's like, oh, I don't know what's going to happen there. It might be very dangerous. So you all can decide to not go there. It's going to be a volunteer mission, which, as the commander of the station, kudos to him. That is very, very good that he does this, because, getting sucked into a time warp is not something that anybody there signed up for. So it's nice that he acknowledges that. But yeah, he never does this kind of line of questioning for himself or his own responsibility. It's more when it comes to others that he's very eager to deal with that, which, probably somebody should point out to him that this is not normal. Anything else about the build-up to this mission? One scene that I actually quite like is when they first receive the distress signal from Babylon 4, and Sinclair has this small moment of catching himself of, this is Sinclair and I'm an Earth Force commander. I can't really tell you that I'm from Babylon 5 because that might very much confuse you, because that's not supposed to exist yet. That was just a fun little tidbit that I liked.
Yeah, but also a realistic one. I mean, if this like, here's Commander Sinclair of Babylon 5, this is like, it's so daily to him that it's like breathing. You just do it. And therefore, in this moment that he has to stop himself and not get in his regular introduction he has done over and over again since he became commander of Babylon 5. I really like this, because it makes him again so much more relatable, human and everything than these usually very clean talks you have in series or movies or anything. There's like really little problematic in the way you speak. They don't stumble over their words or stop for thinking and everything, which is also why I think I really like the acting of Martin Freeman, because in most of his characters he really does this short moments of like, oh wait, I have to think what I'm saying, and to see this here also something I really like to see.
And this is in large part also what sells this character to me. If I have this science fiction hero who is supposed to be larger than life and always knows what to say and such, then it becomes very hard to excuse, okay, but why is he then so stupid to go into every other situation alone? If I have Sinclair, who is established to be this flawed human character, then it's more like, I want to still beat him over the head with a flagpost because it's a stupid decision he made, but I can believe it as a stupid decision of his and not of the writer trying to make a point, trying to write this perfect hero. On the other hand, I also appreciate this scene a little bit because it's a microcosm of how to deal with the time travel for me, where it's the small little detail where we don't get this explanation, oh, Sinclair must now be very careful not to talk about Babylon 5 because he might contaminate the timeline. It's more very much this idea of, if I tell him I'm from Babylon 5 now, we are going to have a discussion about that. It's going to confuse the guy, it's not going to be productive. So I'm just going to avoid that because it's not contributing here. So we still get the same actions, but we don't get hung up on the thing, this is an important plot point because this is about time travel. And for me, this goes a long way of kind of making this bearable. Talking about human moments, this isn't the only time we get some nice banter. Once Sinclair and Garibaldi are on the way, we both agree it's a very good decision that this chief of security is along there. I'm still sure both of them kind of regretted the decision while on the shuttle, though, because, Garibaldi tries to do some small talk, and I get the sense that maybe he isn't quite doing that very often with Sinclair. Both of them kind of seem like knowing that they should be talking to each other like normal human people, but also not quite understanding how that works.
Yeah, at the same time, I think they're especially Garibaldi, but I think both are rather bored. I mean, to think to be in this situation where you're really start with a lot of adrenaline in your veins, and oh gosh, I have to go on this mission, or I will go now on this mission. It could be dangerous, and to think like what is it, what is happening, everything like that. So you're really pumped up, and then you have to sit like 2 or 3 hours in the same place, can't do anything. Okay, I probably would be so crazy to have a book with me and read while I have to fly for 2 or 3 hours to a certain place. But yeah, what is it that you usually do? Because in this moment, the adrenaline sinks, you get more relaxed, and the more relaxed you get to the point where you start being bored. And if I think honestly, like people like Sinclair and Garibaldi, there's always action. There's not much time for them to calm down and to be bored. I mean, you have to learn to be able to be bored and don't have the urge to do something. It's like this people who play all the time with things. Okay, I have to admit I tend to do this sometimes, but unconsciously. But yeah, that's like the trigger point of I need to do something. And this feels like this is the problem in this situation, because they don't know how to handle boredom and the situation of not having anything to do.
I mean, both of them are in these positions where usually they have in some way to manage the station or the security of the station, this place where the only problem they ever have is an overload of information coming in, and now it's just sitting there and not doing anything. And even if this is something that you're familiar with, like Sinclair was a pilot, he knows how this goes, but that's been a few years ago now. So just also getting out of this mode and decompress to the point where you can be with yourself for a little while. Yeah, this is not something that's very conducive here. So once again, just this moment which makes also these missions feel much more realistic or relatable in these terms, where it's just like, we are going to action now, and usually the episode would just cut to the action, and now it just cuts to this like 3-hour intermediate period where it's just like, we are going, we are not quite there yet. So yeah, so how was the weather today? We're in space, so that doesn't work. It's just kind of this problem. Okay, you already said it looked a little bit like a squid. First impressions of Babylon 4, because this is really the first time we really get to see it and its commander and crew. Obviously, it is mostly a set redress of Babylon 5, naturally, but still, I'm curious, how do you feel? Because we are still early in Season 1. It's not that often that we leave Babylon 5, so this is a big deal.
Well, I have to say I didn't feel like seeing much of a difference to Babylon 5, but honestly, I didn't look as closely as to confidently say they are the same. I'm not really sure what to say to this, because I don't feel like there's that much of information. The most we get is the commander of before, and he's the only thing is that you see him in this agitated state, which is totally reliable in this situation. I mean, how would you handle being stuck in some time mix-up thingy? On the other hand, he certainly distinguishes himself in his character from Sinclair, especially when with Zfas, where he's the antagonist, he's the bad guy. I have to get information out of him, and I will take you with me. And the moment this, I don't know, construction part of before is falling on Zfas, and he's like, we don't have the time, let him lie down there, and Sinclair is still trying to save him.
Yeah.
It's the biggest point of what is their main focus in their character, in their life, in their personality.
I mean, the main reason I asked this question, because I'm curious about how this feels, is because in the lore overall, there is supposed to be a rather stark difference between Babylon 4 and Babylon 5, where Babylon 4 was supposed to be the pinnacle of the Babylon project. It's the largest station, it's the most capable station, it's even kind of more like a spaceship where it's supposed to be much more mobile on its own, able to switch orbits and stuff like that. Obviously the model is a little bit different, but I'm just always curious how much this comes across as you're just watching the episode, and I'm taking from this not that much, no.
Not really, no.
So now I have officially told you it's not a big spoiler or anything like that. It's just something to keep in mind that money ran out after this one. But what you said about the commander, I find very fitting. Yes, he's a guy who was just supposed to oversee the finishing of a big project. He doesn't have the resources for anything, and then this crazy, inconceivable thing happens. So on the one hand, he is much more antagonistic. On the other hand, he's also under much more extreme circumstances. So I'm a little bit ambivalent. I feel like if he had almost 2 years under his belt managing Babylon 4, maybe he would be a lot more chill about that Zatharas as well. But here it's of course very much a weirder thing, especially because Zatharas apparently just appears out of nowhere, which is not something that aliens are supposed to do. So it is kind of suspicious what's happening there.
On the other hand, we don't know what the commander has experienced so far.
Yes.
We have little insight on Sinclair, and therefore, okay, he has experienced much more dire situations, which obviously makes him in most situations he's experiencing now more relaxed, because this is nowhere on the same scale, most of the time, nowhere on the same scale what he has had in his past.
Yes.
Therefore, not really much information really there to put these two against each other and see what comes out.
And if we're talking about experience, it's also an important case. We don't really know what Babylon 4 and the commander of Babylon 4 have seen as they were sort of drifting through time. I mean, the only little inkling that we get in this episode are these visions that Sinclair gets of Babylon 5 being at the end of its ropes and in this weird attack. So before we continue talking about the fate of Babylon 4, I'm kind of curious what you thought about these little snippets. It's not the first time that we've seen prophesized that Babylon 5 might get destroyed, but it's certainly the most immediate imagery that we got from that.
Well, I'm in the direction of the future isn't set in stone, therefore this is just a possibility of things that might happen, and that there might be some sort of attack of obviously a rather difficult enemy might happen. Therefore it would be interesting to see this, especially considering the small snippet we got from this that Sinclair and Garibaldi see there. Might be interesting how this would be implemented or even diverse from this, let's say, some sort of original thing. But I'm not sure how much ground I would give this flash they have, because I can't really, it's hard to say how reliable or how reliable these kind of things are.
That is certainly true. I mean, we don't really have experience with flashes from the future, but when the Centauri prophetess was there, certainly her prophecies came true, but then she herself also said about visions of Babylon 5 being destroyed, it is in flux, it's not set in stone. So you're completely right there. And I mean, in terms of the impact of this scene, if all this tells for Sinclair is, hey, your station might get attacked and destroyed one day, okay, I'm pretty sure he kind of knew that, right? It's more the immediacy of being in this moment. What I'm curious about... Yeah, but what I'm curious about is, do you have any theories, inkling who this rather advanced enemy might be? Because this is somebody comes to destroy the station, sure, but do we really have credible candidates for that at this point? Is this Jakar on a power trip? Or or something like that.
Yeah, Jakar digitated to Mega Jakar. I don't know. Or they built what was this huge constructed thing in the Power Rangers was called?
Oh, there. Now you date us that we're also too young too young to properly remember that.
Yeah, maybe they found their Godzilla. I don't know. So far, I would say no,
Okay.
but
But
there's a lot of information we're missing. Technically, considering this whole Minbari thing, where the society is splitting in an uproar, this might turn into something really big. I mean, they could have won the war. So far, the information from the war back there, though it doesn't feel fitting to me, at least not in this context. I don't know. I have to admit, all the time I have to think of the what were they? I think the Reapers from Mass Effect.
okay.
That's what I kind of have in mind.
I mean, this I find very interesting. So it does evoke sort of this more existential threat than, oh, this is an enemy that we faced before and going this.
Yeah, it kind of, I don't know, actually the only thing we really see there is that they're breaking through some metal construction. People are running around. And I think this kind of weapon Garibaldi is holding at this point is something, at least with this sort of armor or whatever, wasn't used until then.
No, this is new stuff.
So, yeah, I could imagine something like this. I mean, there was also this part where they were going to Epsilon 3, where I was always thinking there, oh, did they find their version of the Reapers, or that appeared in the previous Mass Effect games. I could totally imagine that, because it's something, I mean, if you think something doesn't exist or doesn't exist anymore, it's completely off the scale if something like this reappears, and then to really have an option to fight this, because you always will know they don't exist anymore. I don't have to bother myself in this direction with them. So yeah, well, maybe to summarize it, on the one hand, I can imagine a few, especially Minbari or the Volon, to get this kind of dangerous, but in this situation that the Flash that we see here, it doesn't feel to me like one of them, but rather something that didn't appear until now.
Okay. I can neither confirm or deny anything to you. I will say I really love the Reaper idea, and it makes sense in my mind for two reasons looking at that Flash. For one is, we can ask this question because the enemy in these flashes are rather elusive. If it was the Minbari or something, not to say that Garibaldi is prone to using racial slurs or something like that, but I would kind of see him talking about, oh, the boneheads are coming through the doors or something like that. Like, it feels like you would be more concrete in that. And also, these scenes do kind of feel like a zombie movie. You have a lot of civilians running around, and they're just in the middle of there. And, this makes more sense to me thinking about a Reaper attack with, like, husks running around and, like, almost this zombie invasion, rather than any conventional war where you would expect, okay, the civilians are at least going to be in their shelters or getting evacuated at this point. This seems much more like they got caught by surprise by something more powerful than they could imagine, so there was never time to prepare or anything. So in these regards, I'm kind of put in the mind of, like, like the Mass Effect 3 trailer or something, where it's just really this apocalyptic feeling about it.
And let me add there, I think even if let's say the Minbari would suddenly attack, I think it would still be much more coordinated what they would do against these, because they are the enemy they know. Therefore, they have a few ideas. Okay, what would help? What should we do? And it feels way too messy for this in the Flash here.
Okay. I like that a lot. So very good. We got a lot more out of this little Flash than I anticipated at first glance. In this case, you mentioned Zfas a little bit and how he's dealt with by the commander of Babylon 4. I have to ask, there are a lot of firsts in this episode. I have to ask how you got on with this character overall, because I can tell you right now, Zfas is rather divisive in the Babylon 5 fandom.
Okay. Well, I was a bit sad again because he's so humanoid looking. I mean, a bit more of a difference here and now would be nice because, yeah, if I think back to Mass Effect, you have like a lot of different shaped creatures running around. Of course, there's a lot of humanoid creatures, but it feels a bit more diverse in this regards to me.
And especially Zfas is this character that we see one of as part of this weird time travel, so it's not like you can say budget restrictions or something like that. If it's a one-off character, that would be doable, right? You could create a Muppet or something like that.
Yeah, so that was the first thing I noticed. Then, of course, this non-answering thing he's doing.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not sure if it's just me in some controlling way who would, if I would be in this situation to travel back in time and have to do something, I would think beforehand what I can tell the people that they believe me. And I wouldn't be so naive to go in there with, I can't tell you anything, but please don't arrest me. What? I mean, this yeah. So,
So as a summary of that, would you deal with him more like Sinclair, very calm and collected, or would you also start interrogate him like the commander of Babylon 4, being like, you must have better answers than this and tell me?
I think I would get to the point where I would ask for a drink, sit there rather desperately and say, come on, you have to give me anything else, like I can't give you an answer.
Okay.
I have to operate on something because, no, not giving an answer doesn't get you anywhere, except you have the weapons or the power position to hold others off, which is obviously in this position not happening.
Okay.
So, yeah, that, I mean, he's obviously really invested in his case. I mean, he's even going to the point of, I will sacrifice my life if necessary. I don't want to, but if there's no other way, which is also something I really like to see this. I don't want to sacrifice my life. I'm not blindly running there and, you can have my life.
Yeah.
But I do see that if there is no other option, that will be it. So this kind of view I really like again, because that makes the character more relatable. I think, at least. On the other hand, there is not much for me to say about him, except maybe I really disliked his teeth.
Oh yeah, I remember in one of his last scenes we get a really good shot of them, and they are really not pleasant to look at.
No. I mean, they don't have to be beautifully white. I mean, that's something I can only dream of too. But honestly, this yeah, I think if I would sit directly in front of him, I would be really scared to get this bad breath directly blown into my face, because it just looks like I ate myself through some fresh collection and then brush my teeth after this.
They are really. This seems like it's it's a concerted effort to make them as bad as possible. This is not something that happens accidentally. But no, the teeth really got me away from whatever I wanted to say. So let me rewind a bit if I can get there. I mean, okay, a lot of what you said makes a lot of sense to me. Talking about this design, yes, it's very humanoid. To me, it also feels like a little bit out of place in the sci-fi setting almost. Like, he reminds me more of something that I would imagine in set 80s science fantasy movie, in his like pelt coat and stuff, even the bad teeth and something like that. He seems like he would be more at home living in a forest and giving out advice rather than being stuck on a space station, which personally I kind of like, because it reminds me of this side of the Babylon 5 universe where the Minbari have the Seekers, where somebody's on a quest of the Grail. This more, if you're advanced enough to understand this universe a bit better, you can treat it almost like a fantasy setting where you go on adventures and quests and stuff, and not like a serious military sci-fi thing where you have to do missions and things like that. So from that direction, I kind of enjoy it. What you said about...
Let me say a little something about that. What, if you put it like that, I think it feels more open, like not a hard structure of this is science fiction.
Yes.
Because on the other hand, it's supposed to be, about the future, about a lot of weird new things you haven't seen anywhere else. Haven't seen. What was I saying? Yeah, well, you get what I want to say.
That's close enough.
But yeah, if you limit like this is the science fiction genre and we are just staying in this, I think this is a bit shortcoming in regards what this genre is supposed to do or supposed to want, and therefore using things of other genres like fantasy and stuff, I think it just broadens the things you can work out there, you can portray there, and generally the mind when you do things like that.
Very much so. Especially, we already talked about, this is an episode that doesn't really have a big of mystery for us and stuff. And of course, this only gets worse if you then stick very close to genre lines and genre tropes. So opening this up is always good for offering a little more possibilities here. You talked briefly about liking the way that Zfas sort of deals with this loyalty to the One. And if we really assume that the One in the end is revealed as Sinclair, I would hope that this is the kind of thing that Sinclair wants to inspire, right? Like he, once again, we see him giving opportunity to the pilots not to go on this potential suicide mission. So if in some capacity he becomes the One, this almost, once again, sounding more like a fabled figure of fantasy than anything else, I would hope that he fosters a kind of belief around him that is more about, you can give your life, but you don't have to want to die. Don't be fanatic about it or anything like that. So I think here it just kind of fits together that, this is the kind of leadership that I would expect from Sinclair, whatever happens to him and ages him and gives him the scar and such. All right, then I think we're fine returning to Babylon 4 and start talking about the actual evacuation. And I don't know if this is something intentional or something that came up for you as well, but the scenes that we get of people getting evacuated from Babylon 4 when things get really bad, and we have like this barrier where people are pressing against them and they are getting pulled through. And so more than anything else, this always reminds me of Titanic of all things, the scenes of like the lower classes decks getting evacuated and people trying to push through barriers and stuff. It just always reminded me of that, which is a good thing in this case because it really gives the sense of there's an urgent catastrophe happening right now and people are trying to get out and people have to manage this getting out so that there isn't a mass panic and everybody just doesn't get to the shuttles.
Yeah, well, when I was seeing this, I had to think of two things. One thing is something apart from Titanic really happened, which was the Love Parade in Düsseldorf. No, or was it? Oh no, it was Duisburg, right? Okay. For those listening in who don't know this, there was, I don't know which year it was, but it's been a couple of years now, the Love Parade, an electronic festival, techno festival, which was up until then, I think, usually held in Berlin. That was, through some circumstances changed the place, and they relocated it in a way that if you wanted to go on the area that is there where the parade was held, you had to go through a rather small path, or I'm not sure how to describe this, but the problem was that at some point there was a panic breakout, and people were pushing each other, and I'm not sure how many died and were hurt, but it was really, really horrible thing, which is, I don't know, up until this point, was it closed with judges on the court or anything? I don't
know if it's completely closed, but there were definitely several convictions on that behalf, because, ultimately what it came down to was gross negligence on part of the people planning the party, which is important because it was also city officials and stuff that approved everything. And it was basically a case of everybody involved saying, well, what's the worst that can happen? And then the worst did happen. And it was a big tragedy.
The point here that relates to this situation is that there are a lot of people in a small push in a very, very small area, and especially considering that they were already in a panicked state, that's something I could have really imagined there. I mean, there were people pushing from the back. I mean, you have this with concerts where people are pushing from the back, and in the front there, the security people have to pull out those before they get crushed and everything. So I was, kind of feeling this there, and luckily that didn't happen, at least, or it wasn't shown. And the other thing, wait, just let me collect my thoughts for a moment.
Sure.
What was the other thing I was thinking about? Can't remember anymore.
Otherwise, I can say something to your point just now. Maybe you remember then. Because mass panics are a real thing that unfortunately happens every now and again. And I think it's very nice that we get to see a little glimpse of that here, because we are always told, there's 250,000 people on this station, but this is a small glimpse of what that actually means. And managing big masses of people is a massive undertaking, and anything to move them quickly from one place to another, even if there isn't an actual emergency going on, even if the panic seemingly comes completely out of nowhere, is a massive challenge, a massive undertaking. So even just to showcase that, our security people that were sent here are actually doing their jobs. There's more things to being station security than just shooting the bad guys at some point. No, it's about actually enabling coordination of big groups of people and getting these things done in a way that nobody dies, hopefully.
Now I remembered what I wanted to go on as the second thing, because I was reminded of World War Z. The book I might to point out here rather strongly, because the book and the movie are, so far I could read until now, have nothing in common except the original idea of how the zombies were engulfing the whole world. Because there's this, the book is, I really like it. So anyone who hasn't read it and is interested in this apocalyptic zombie stuff, I can just really recommend to read it. because it looks at different nations, different people of different classes, obviously, how they handle this zombie outbreak, the situation, the aftermath, and everything. And I was really reminded, or had to think of, there's a version of, or a part of where it's about India, and there are a lot of people trying to get on ships. And the one who's talking about this is saying that if they were going slower and group by group, that a lot more people, maybe even all who were at this, I don't know what exactly this was, shipwreck place or anything, but if they would have done it coordinated and slower and not desperately pushing and everything, there would be a lot of, even maybe all, be saved. And that's also a very, very important thing I see here, because in the end it feels like everyone was saved from before, and that was because it was coordinated. Even the people there were obviously scared to no end, but since the security guards made the good job, it was possible to do this.
Very much so. I didn't expect a reference to World War Z in this discussion to come up, but it's one of these books that talks about the zombie apocalypse, and the great tragedy of it isn't actually the world ending, it's everything surrounding that and how people deal with that, which is really fun to see. A small trivia tidbit that people like to bring up: the guy who wrote World War Z went on to write some Minecraft books, which is a turn of events that nobody quite expected, but apparently they are very interesting because they are from the perspective of somebody who has no association with the game whatsoever. So it's just a really odd choice to do. What a career choice. But no, to bring it back, definitely it is a testament both to the fact that security does a good job, but at the same time also that it's only the skeleton crew of Babylon 4 that is here. So it is probably people that are professional in some capacity here, and it just calls to mind, if we imagine something like the attack on Babylon 5, getting the people out is going to be difficult, getting civilians out is going to be more difficult, and then how do we even go about evacuating the lurkers? There isn't even a manifest how many of them are on the station, let alone ways of properly getting them, coordinating them, and then would people even care enough to do that? So it's just, I think if we talk about any threat to Babylon 5 in the future, this is a scene that kind of highlights what the stakes actually are, what it actually means to say, let's get all the people off the ship. It's much easier said than done.
I mean, we already got this I think just not so long ago in another episode, where it was about, it was with the Epsilon 3 planet, where they were saying, we in worst case, we have to evacuate everyone, and we don't have enough ships to evacuate everyone. So,
and I mean, this is also, even in that episode we talked about, this is kind of Titanic 2.0. Why wouldn't you have enough ships on the station to evacuate everyone? But then it also comes down to the fact that we can't just do it in time. It's impossible to do on time, just because it's not as easy as saying, I want this many seats on the shuttles, I need to get people to the shuttles, I need to funnel them through the dock area in some capacity, and there's just not a feasible way of doing that very quickly. The last thing maybe to talk about in the whole Babylon 4 plot, unless you have something else to see, is that last scene where we finally get the reveal who is in the spacesuit, and we get a little bit more, and I'm just curious what you think about that very final scene and the interaction that Sinclair has there.
You're talking about, obviously, Dylan.
Good.
Who you can't see but recognize through her voice, putting her hand on Sinclair's shoulder. I'm not sure what it was she was saying, but along of the lines, you tried your best, come on, we have to go. I wasn't surprised about this either, because maybe because of the B plot in this episode, it kind of feels like leading to changes, and that obviously Delenn is far more connected to Babylon 5, not just through her doing and her job, but also personally.
Yeah.
Therefore, yeah, maybe even that. I mean, at the end of the episode, we still don't know if the position of Delenn will change. But I still could, either way, I could see this kind of development coming.
Okay.
Even if she would be no longer ambassador or stay as the ambassador, I think both ways would be fitting there.
Okay. Well, that
so another, maybe to summarize it for me, just another non-surprise for me.
I mean, I will get back to this and ask you a little bit about what your expectations are going forward, but that obviously is part of the tapestry that we do at the very end of both discussions here. For now, this sounds like a very good segue into Delenn's side plot that she has here. I suspect we're not going to have a huge amount to talk about here, but maybe a few things. Definitely, the first thing that I would like to talk about is just a little bit about the procedure of Delenn getting called away from Babylon 5 and the whole sort of little odyssey that she goes to, getting on her small ship, going through the portal, getting to the other side of the portal, waiting for another ship to rendezvous, and all of this thing. If you imagine you have an ambassador on a space station and they get called by the government for a big important decision, is this what you had in mind, or just in general impressions on that maybe?
Well, it depends on why this meeting is called. I mean, if it's something that is supposed to be kept as a secret, this will totally fit to me, because, well, if no one knows who you're meeting with, it's more unlikely they will find out what you want to talk.
Sure.
Though, since it's just one ship, I mean, we don't see much of the inside. We don't know who's on this ship else than the Grey Council, and maybe a few servant people, considering what we see. Though I would imagine that, the Grey Council, like the powerful group of people of the Minbari, just traveling with this one ship kind of feels wrong, maybe just because when some important person here is traveling somewhere, it's like a whole flock of people there to protect them. But on the other hand, it's the Minbari, so maybe this ship is more than enough to protect them. Maybe it's so good weaponized that can shoot off everything and everyone who comes close it, or that it's super fast, or both. I don't know, but still feels a bit strange to me. The other thing is how this whole thing is done, because technically Delenn is part of the Grey Council, but she gets there and everyone's saying, "Yeah, welcome. We decided in your absence that you will become the next leader."
Yeah.
That's usually not a way a council should work, or at least to what we would expect. It would, if there are a lot of people coming together, it should be more of a democratic decision. And if someone says no, especially the one who should take over this position, then this should be perfectly fine.
Yeah. We will have to talk about the decision process there, because it is certainly a choice that they made there. But I think the point you made earlier is also perfectly valid. If you imagine in the real world, the entire government going on one plane to have a meeting, you don't really want that to happen. And of course, it's a sci-fi universe. We can make the argument, oh, it's a sci-fi ship that is all powerful, but we know already, not very long ago, Nerun talked about how the cause for the first Earth Minbari war was the death of Dukat, who was like a great leader. So clearly things can go wrong, even for the Minbari, at certain turns of history. So having all of your government on one place is certainly an odd choice. Like, no matter how secure it is, it would be more... Like, even if this ship is the most secure vessel, it would still be more secure to have them on two different ones and just have a Zoom call. It's certainly possible.
Yeah.
The other thing is also, and this is why I asked, every time Sinclair talks with a senator or a government official back on Earth, the show makes a point to show us this guy is sitting in Geneva, this guy is sitting in New York City. They are on Earth in important cities doing their job. Here you have a government that is in the middle of nowhere on a spaceship in the middle of nowhere, literally shrouded in darkness. Once again, this seems odd to me. This idea that, this Grey Council is about as far removed from their people as humanly possible, or Minbari possible. And there's also this thing, Delenn is part of the Grey Council, but apparently she can just masquerade as an ambassador, that it's not to a huge detriment of their government. So you just have to ask the question, okay, but how does the Grey Council work? What does it actually do if it can just float around somewhere and do its own thing? So there is certainly this question, how does this Grey Council connect to everyday life on Minbar? Like, how do you have any kind of things there? Like, imagine having an election in that kind of environment. That seems not very feasible.
And this, I could imagine, is one of the problems why this rift is appearing in their society.
Yeah.
But before we keep going with this, I remembered now that I wanted to say something else, because this whole appearance, they stand in the dark just with a bit of a spotlight to everyone with ropes and everything. This is more like some sort of ritual thing, like strongly religious, even to the point of where, I'm not sure, like some sort of sect or something. Because, if you think about it, what kind of this appearance, if you projected to our history, when is this or did this happen? Because it was illegal to do so, or they wanted to not let anyone know, or in most cases even both. I have to think, like, I don't know, these really early mass that were held in Rome before they were acknowledged as primary religion. They were hunted and everything, and they were holding their meetings in the dark where no one would see and notice them. It kind of reminds me in this direction, and not like an official government meeting. But also, as you said, it's really removed from their people and everything, which is the question to ask: how much do they really belong anymore to their people?
But I think the way you describe it as these early secretive sects, definitely. I mean, one of them literally has a wizard staff in his hand as he walks around with a little triangle in there and stuff. It very much feels like something ritualistic that is going on, and that fits with the way that Delenn introduces the whole thing. Like, she talks about being in the Grey Council, between the darkness and the light. There's like these invocations almost surrounding this, and the whole procedure, like you already described, is the council decided that she is the leader, and so she goes there and accepts being the leader. And not doing that, going against this procedure, immediately kind of causes this massive issue. So you get the sense this isn't actually a normal government procedure where somebody gets elected or something. This is a ritual. And what she has done is not denied a decision. She has strayed from the way the ritual is supposed to go. And I think in that context, suddenly the whole reaction to this is going to make a lot more sense. This is like you're standing in Catholic Mass and decide, you know what, I don't want to have a drink of the wine right now. Like, no, that's not how that works. The entire point of this is it's a rhetoric question, and you go through with the ritual. So yeah, in that respect, it feels very odd. And You know, I just imagine Nerun being a part of this. Like, he is the guy who comes from the practical military caste, and he ascends far enough at some point to, like, imagine him ascending to the point where he sees the Grey Council, and he's like, these are the guys in charge of us, and they have hoods on them, and they talk in riddles, and they have these weird, like, ritual things that they happen, and they are the ones that tell me where I have to send my people to die. That's crazy. Like, of course, the warrior caste would look at this and not want to be a part of this anymore. Like, the rift makes more and more sense to me in that regard.
Yes, and especially if you think about it, about the daily life, what you have to do, from really typical chores and stuff to do, to things you have to buy and everything. The more removed someone in the government is from this daily usual structure most people are experiencing, how can someone like this make a decision that is directed for these people, which is, at least it feels to me now, a really big problem we have here too. Because, I mean, who are those that are in charge? Usually, most of the times, they have a lot of money. For their daily life is completely different than most. I mean, especially in America, I mean, you have to have millions lying on your bank account to even be able to say, hey, I want to become president. This is so removed from usual life. How can someone like this make a proper decision for the masses that are way different?
I mean, this is one of the very few bipartisan issues, right? No matter where on the political spectrum you look, there's always one version of saying we have to drain the swamp or get rid of the elites or have a grassroots movement or something. This call for getting people into power that are actually, like, not entirely sequestered from the rest of society by wealth and background and stuff, that is one of these things that just permeates everything in some capacity. And of course, there's a lot of disagreement of what the right way of going about that is, and certainly different degrees. But as a fundamental idea, once again, this is a case where Babylon 5 just speaks to something that in everyday life we see very much being an issue. And
maybe before someone is throwing like, Meike, you're an anti-American person, I'm not just saying this is an American problem. This is a problem everywhere. So I think just that the American structure is way more prominent or well known everywhere. So
it's just a fact. Like, when we look at international news, even here where we live, American politics just play a bigger role than a lot of others. But even today, there's a headline about party contributions and financing in Japan being changed and overhauled because of exactly the same problem. So this is, definitely not something that is, like, nationally or even limited to a certain brand of democracy or something like that. Like, it's definitely something that happens all the time, even with the Membari, as we've seen here. But it does make you question, like, how does their system and structure work? And the more we learn about the Membari being a very old and powerful species, the fact that they haven't figured out this part is slightly concerning, because it means there's just more power involved in the hands of people who look like a weird Illuminati sect of shadow people that are kind of cosplaying wizards instead of doing actual work. So it's a little bit disconcerting. And
I really like your description of the Grey Council. Can we please put this on a stamp or something?
It's just a thing. Up to this point, the only time we saw the Grey Council was in Sinclair's vision, right? And from his perspective, the scared human who got abducted, it looked absolutely crazy. And now we see it through the eyes of the land. We just get the confirmation Sinclair wasn't imagining things. It is legitimately that crazy. They are always like that. And that is just not something, like, you would have hoped that it was overburdened. And it's, of course, also one of these things. Imagine somehow magically anybody on Earth got to see this Membari leadership. Anti-Membari sentiments and xenophobic sentiments would go through the roof, because it legitimately looks crazy and it is legitimately very intimidating and scary to imagine that this is what you're up against. So, no, this is just bad news on every possible level.
I'm thinking, is there any background where you have like this rope thing culture stuff that is connoted to a positive way?
I mean, the closest thing that I can imagine is if you go into like later Christianity with various iterations of monasteries and various, especially in the connection with Passion of Christ and stuff, there is this idea that obscuring your face is sort of taking the individuality out of it and acting more as a community and experiencing thing as such. So this is where I could imagine it has more positive connotations, but even then, the church of that time doesn't have very positive connotations for us anymore, so it's also not the best example. But
yeah, because you were saying this, there was like, nope.
no, it's just at least by people at their time. But no, in general, we humans have.
Well, I have to throw in there. When you were saying like monasteries and things, I had to think like there was a short documentary I saw about Hildegard von Bingen.
Yeah.
And where self hurt, I don't know what's it called.
Oh, I would have to look that up. But yeah, basically whipping yourself or
yes, whipping yourself and take this really ugly things putting around legs or anything that cut into your flesh, and this was also part of this documentary because this was something Hildegard von Bingen tried to get rid of, which I'm really thankful for, because I wouldn't want to experience anyone something like this. But this was part of being in a monastery or anything like that, and that was the first thing that came up when you said monastery. Therefore, it was like,
yeah, I think we humans just have this weird obsession with faces, right? Like obscuring the face in almost every tradition that at least I can come up with is always connotated with this idea of not being particularly pleasant, because it removes sort of this individuality from humans. And oftentimes, if I think of like Christmassy, various Krampus traditions in Germany and such, where it's usually, it's supposed to be a fun tradition, but it's just an excuse for people to put on a mask and go absolutely ham wild because it creates anonymity. So yeah, not many good examples, but of course it's also
thinking about what about, I don't know enough about druids, but would be something like this thing was, or maybe I'm just getting to this because I kind of have this picture of King Arthur and druids in my mind, and then there's this teeny serious Merlin that I have to think of.
I mean, that is also a question how much that is historically actually a thing for them, right?
Of course, I'm not sure especially thinking of the serious in this connection. That's why I'm asking it there.
I mean, once again, this is a question we will extend to our listeners if they can think of some examples where fully obscured faces, especially with hoods, have a positive connotations. I'm sure there are going to be examples of this. Like, human history is so incredibly broad and diverse. I'm sure there's somewhere out there an example for this, but at least off the top of my head, I have a very hard time thinking of some. But of course, while we are doing all of this, it's also important to remember that it's of course all a human frame of reference, and who knows how in Minbari culture this might be a completely different thing and would then of course be also perfectly valid, like if this is fine for them. What I will say, in the way that Dylan reacts to everything in this episode, it seems like the everyday Minbari frame of reference is much closer to what we humans have, and what the Minbari Grey Council is doing is, even by her standards, odd. Even though she's used to it, even though she's part of it, she doesn't seem particularly comfortable at any point of these interactions.
though I might put it to the situation she's in with all this.
That's of course.
But though I have to meaningly have to say, since this whole series is produced for humans, and I'm not sure how much how much space there is to explain. Okay, we have usually this kind of association with this kind of object or anything, but this people, they have a completely different symbolic meaning in this object. Therefore, yeah, I'm not sure how much space there is to do something like this.
No,
especially in a series.
No, and absolutely, I would say if the Grey Council comes across as really odd and cult-like to us right here, I would expect this is intentional. And if they later explain to us why that isn't the case, it should also be to characters in the show be a moment of, really? That doesn't track properly. And I can tell you without spoilers so far, I feel like Babylon 5 is relatively good in managing like the way the audience feels about things. Like so far, I don't think there have been like massive contradictions where we were like, oh, that's clearly the writer he wants us to believe something. Except maybe that sometimes the mysteries of the show think they are much more mysterious than they might be. But we will see on that as well. For now, though, I would say we've touched on all the big points that I had noted down on my little post-it note here. How about yours?
I have one last thing, but one small thing beforehand. This Valen guy that
yes,
Dylan names when she starts talking about the prophecy. Did this name appear before? Because I wasn't sure.
Oh, there you ask me. So I would say yes, but only in the context of somebody might say, oh, in Valen's name, or thank Valen, or something.
Okay.
It's kind of used like in human terms, you would use Jesus or God as a not particularly religious person. It's just a very prominent figure in Minbari history, faith, whatever it might be.
Okay, because I was a bit irritated when this name was dropped, and it was like, okay, I think this is supposed to be someone important, but I can't point my finger on it why this person is supposed to be.
And it's definitely at this point, this is definitely the first time you would have any idea like why this would be important or not. Like this is definitely in the, all you need to understand is in the cultural framework of a Minbari, this name tells you a lot. As a human, not very much. And that's all we need to know.
Okay. Then to the big thing, this whole speech that comes after the name dropping from Dylan. Because I was a bit, biased what to do with her words.
Okay.
On one hand, I mean, she starts with something like that the prophecy, which I have to admit, I rolled a bit my eyes because it's a prophecy. Okay.
Yeah.
And she starts off with some humans had a destiny they couldn't interfere with, and that's one of the reasons. This whole prophecy is one of the reasons the war was stopped.
Okay.
Which is interesting to know. Okay, that's the reason this war ended or was ended through the Minbari, why they gave up. But the whole thing that the humans, it feels like this again, this polarization of the humans, they are so amazing and they will do so great things even though they don't realize this themselves now. On one hand, it feels like again this glorification of humans that was where I mentioned, I think when we started watching all this. On the other hand, I could imagine to put this in the direction of, I mean, you already said a few times, the Minbari, the space elves of this TV show. Mm-hmm. Therefore, it feels a bit like, okay, if you consider the Minbari, the grown-ups, and the humans, the kids, then it would be more of the direction of the parent that sees something bigger in their children. I'm not sure if this is too far-fetched, because I don't think I know enough about the Minbari to really put this strongly. But yeah, that's the 2 points I had battling in my head when this speech was over, because I really can't decide which side I want to be on or follow, because both have this unhealthy feeling. I'm not sure how to put it into words.
Maybe I can help some perspective here. I'm not sure,
Yes,
but let me try. In general, I would like to talk to you about prophecy a little bit, because I feel like we both have strong opinions about it, and that might be interesting going forward, because it's not that far into the show yet, and Babylon 5 has talked about prophecy quite a few times up to this point, so that's a topic on its own. The speech Dylan gives definitely, for me, also carries this idea of, the special humans, and it's especially grating hearing an alien talked about this, because then it's like a writer like writing an imaginary straw man praising him. Like that's odd. To the show's credit, though, I think there are two important factors here. One is we've already established that Minbari, especially religious Minbari, are weird, and they are very over the top. Just look at the Grey Council. I mean, look at them. Once again, a wizard staff and wizard robes. So if they write any normal Wikipedia article, it's probably going to sound something like that, which to me is just this thing. This isn't the writer giving me a voiceover about how humanity is the greatest thing ever as an objective fact. This is a very particular kind of people talking in a very particular way, which I can believe in their context, and I can believe it especially because the Minbari have fought this massive war, and then for some reason, and we, like you said, we learn it has something to do with humans and destiny, ended the war. So what I see here is Dylan having to justify to herself that her people fought this massive war basically for nothing, basically for just realizing, oops, we were wrong, let's rudder back and capitulate. And I feel like if this is what you have to do, if this is basically them rationalizing a completely irrational decision, then it makes sense to me that in your mind you start aggrandizing humans this much, because surely it must have been a very good and a very noble reason to spare humanity, so we must in our minds build up humanity to this massive degree, because otherwise it would be all kind of pointless and we would have to admit a level of guilt that is just not very comfortable. So in this kind of reading I can deal with the speech, but only because there's this masterly asterisk there. This is a very specific person of a very specific culture for a very specific reason talking about it like that. And that doesn't make it a fact that JMS wants me to believe about humanity in general.
Yeah, well, I have to admit that makes it far more better and more accepting to me.
Wonderful. But not to lull you just into positivity, talk to me a little bit about why you roll your eyes at prophecy so much, because we've touched on it before, but I just want to hear it again.
Yeah, well, the general idea of that there is usually a chosen one who makes everything better. I really hate this idea of that there is one person that turns everything around. Because usually, even if this is some sort of decision that was made from maybe one person, it usually doesn't work like this. There's a lot more in that's happening, a lot more things interacting with each other, being it people, being it their decision, being the consequences of their actions, what they are saying and everything. So it's again this glorification of one person that doesn't exist. Sorry, at least not in my world. Yeah, you don't have this. I mean, of course, there's amazing things people can do, but usually it's not, if it's something really big, it's not the action of one, but many. I mean, it's maybe I'm getting there in another round for a few people, but if you have like a really successful CEO, yeah, then usually it's not because the CEO is doing so great, but because he is credited everything the people under him are doing, those that working for him, that are doing a lot of things, necessary things, good things, but the one credited for are not each individual, but the one at the top.
This is really interesting because it's a completely different problem than I have with prophecies, but a very valid one. And I mean, along the line of reasoning that you're mentioning, it also immediately creates this thing. If we in this episode look at Sinclair being the one, like, how do you combine this prophecy talking about one hero fixing everything with an actual human character? And we talk about how Sinclair is just a very flawed human. Like, he clearly isn't the person that is single-handedly going to fix everything. And whenever he tries, we want to bonk him because it is not good that he tries that. It's not a healthy behavior. And the show itself has called this out. Like, even if you have somebody who would be willing to try this, it's usually because there's underlying problems there. Which in my mind also creates a little bit of hope, because in my mind, Sinclair as a character so far has shown the show to be relatively aware about the fact that a hero complex is not a good thing. So maybe this means there is also some awareness that this aspect of prophecies might not be ideal. There's nothing in the show right now that proves to you that this might be or might not be the case, but this is where I would gather some hope.
Yeah, well, so far I would say, or let's say I would hope that it's just a projection of things, because so far we have in several situations seen that it's not just Sinclair who saves the day.
Yeah.
He has Garibaldi, he has Ivanova, he has Dr. Franklin in some cases. There's a lot of people helping him achieve something good.
Yes.
So, but again, it's this structure, he's at the top. Therefore, I can imagine that there's this projection of, okay, he's at the top, therefore he's the one doing the good things. And well, I have to admit, of course, if there would be someone else at the top, it would be different, because someone else might have other values, other priorities, would be less differentiating in his actions and decisions. Therefore, yes, it is good that he is in the position he is, and this certainly has some merit. Though it's again the one. Yeah, it's just like this again, this projection of he single-handedly ended a war and stuff like that. I don't like, because it's a really strong fabrication of history, if you want to put it that way.
Which is so ironic, because we clearly see in this episode Sinclair on his own can't be the one, because the one actually facilitating all the weird things is, if anybody, Zfas more than anything, right? Like, he's the guy who seems to be the one who should have all the answers and who is actually like traveling around and stuff. So it immediately creates a situation where Sinclair certainly can be a one, but surely not the guy who really affects whatever is happening right now, because that is clearly somebody else doing right now. Like, I see it on screen. Maybe to very quickly touch on my issue with prophecies, it's mostly to do with the fact of where is this information coming from, right? Like, nobody likes a prophecy that just tells you how things are going to turn out just because the writer needs a motivation for a hero or something to follow. There are instances where I think a prophecy can work really, really well. You look at something like Asimov, where predicting the future is this massive undertaking, all in its own. Or look at something of like Dune, where it's a very central part of things, and then also immediately subverted in how a pursuit of a prophecy actually in and of itself becomes far more a driving force than whatever the prophecy itself says. So for me, this is one of the big open questions in Babylon 5 up to this point, when people talk about prophecies. Okay, but where is this coming from? How is this supposed to happen, and how set into the future are these things? Because otherwise there's just always the risk, okay, if it's just outright telling me of what's going to happen, that kind of deflates all the build-up. And if it's all just in flux, then the prophecy isn't worth anything, then anything can happen either way. So this is kind of the balance act that at this point I feel like the show leaves relatively open, and me as a first-time viewer would probably be annoyed by that. Not being a first-time viewer, I'm in a very luxurious position of knowing more things, but that doesn't help you.
Yeah, well, maybe to put a background to the prophecy thing, apart from really bad written stories, I strongly have to think about the prophecies that you have in Greek mythology, which usually end like or start like this. Someone is going to the Oracle of Delphi and asking for a prophecy because he doesn't know what he should do in life. And then he receives a prophecy, which is odd in its words, but most of the time, let's say, clear enough to imagine what is happening next. Like one of the things would be like the story with Perseus and the Medusa, where the child Perseus or his mother is being put in a dungeon because her father, so the grandfather of Perseus, is receiving the prophecy that his grandchild, his grandson, will be the end of his reign. And he's therefore so scared that he is doing this. Of course, his daughter is having a child regardless, because Zeus is interested and nothing can stop Zeus or any of the other gods. And therefore the child is born, and even though he's trying to get rid of them, Perseus is coming one way or another back, and then even accidentally kills his grandfather. So this whole prophecies that you have in Greek mythology, no matter what the people do, they always happen, most of the times in an odd way, and where you think, why did you get a prophecy in the first place? If you didn't know this, then everything would have been different. Because usually the people were triggered through these prophecies in doing something rather stupid.
Especially with ancient oracles, at some point you sit there and think, you know this. This never works out for people. Please just act smartly. I mean, I can completely agree on that, where these prophecies become almost this like weird gotcha moment, right? Where it's just, you're looking at them and it's very obvious that you as the audience are supposed to know better or to learn better from whatever moral is behind that. And yeah, that sometimes isn't the most effective story device to the modern audience, I feel like.
Yes, and if you start with these kind of prophecies, you can't get rid of the irony that you experience every time something like, oh, we have a prophecy for you here. You're like, oh, really? Again? Who's going to it?
Why don't you grant me 3 wishes while you're at it? I'm sure that can't go wrong ever. But all right. I think that touched on most of the big story beats we wanted to, and a little bit of background discussion as well. Looking at the time, we are also at a fairly good one for 1 episode. So I would say we will start our little intermission and then return very shortly for the Quality of Mercy. Welcome back to our very special Christmas installment of the Third Age Babylon 5 podcast. We are now in the second half after our little intermission, and we will talk about the quality of mercy, the last episode before the big finale, which is going to mark our New Year's event. So, we don't do an extra introduction question for this one, but we will do an extra long tapestry to talk about both Babylon Squared and the quality of mercy in the way it connects to the rest of the season. But for now, let's start with a small synopsis of A Quality of Mercy. And lots of things are happening on Babylon 5 now that it is going towards the holiday season for our crew as well. We have Londo on a very important quest of improving relations with other species, which in his terms means making new friends in the casino. We have Dr. Franklin on a very important quest as he investigates a legal clinic in Down Below that has been helping or maybe helping a lot of people. And while all of this is happening, court proceedings on Babylon 5 are happening for a murderer or a serial killer, as we learn, who will experience the death of personality at the hands of Talia. These are the three main things happening, and as always, we start with some first impressions, this time around from Meike.
Surprise. Well, I think this is one of the episodes where I really like the connection to the title again, because in all three cases, you can ask, okay, what is the quality, what is the kind of mercy every of these plot lines ends with? How differentiate these among each other? Though I have to admit, it certainly is the episode before the finale because it feels rather, I don't want to say dull, but yeah, it's rather peaceful, rather quiet compared to the episode before, like a brother before the big boom, as Ivana would say. I like a few moments there, though I have to say overall it's certainly among the less likable episodes for me.
Okay. You have a very diplomatic way of putting that, but I enjoyed very much. I mean, you're completely right. We've spent the last 3 episodes talking about big mysteries of planetary machines, time rifts, and the developments of Minbari culture and stuff, and now it's very much, just everyday things happening on the station. So we are taking a step back for a little bit, but hopefully this will make the big boom at the end of this season feel all the more momentous. Fingers crossed for that. For me, the big problem, this episode always had this effect that there are 2 plots in here that hinge on, I dare to say, very American problems. You have like a plot that is all around, there isn't good healthcare on the station, so we have an illegal clinic going on. And we have an alternative to the death penalty, so that's a big problem. And both of these are interesting topics that also don't pertain to my background, at all. Neither of these are topics that ever come up where I live, because we have joined the rest of the civilized world in not having the death penalty and trying to provide proper healthcare, and not having that. At least watching this show for the first time as a teenager was just kind of, why wouldn't you do that? Why would a show make an episode about that when that is clearly just not an issue anymore? So
may I put in there, I'm really glad that you are the one this time saying that this is a rather American thing here.
I mean, since then, I have seen the show a few more times. I have listened to a lot of American podcasters talk about this episode, so I dare say I have been, my mind has opened up a little bit about the interesting ethical discussions that you can have about these topics and that are being had about these topics. So it's not that I'm sitting here and saying, okay, there's no point talking about this anymore. There certainly is, but still, it feels like out of the many, many episodes of Babylon 5 that are very pertinent to everyday issues that we still face 30 years later, this is certainly one of those where it doesn't hit as hard for me as an international audience member than somebody who maybe lives in the US and has grown up with these issues.
Yeah, certainly, because I mean, it's also not like they're solved these problems, or that the problem is, well, more explored. Why this problem even exists in the first place? It feels rather plain even. Therefore, yeah, it's not really the topic itself doesn't make this episode interesting. Those things I liked in this episode were more the interactions, the things that were said, that got the episode out of the gutter for me.
I think it's also one of these cases. Yeah, this episode on its own hits on two very big societal issues in this way, which obviously also means it maybe doesn't take enough time to explore any of these in as much detail as an episode of The Next Generation maybe would. That being said, just like you, Mike, for me it's the interactions that really set this episode apart, because we get a few character pairings in this one that we don't usually get to see. We get to see, first of all, a lot more of Dr. Franklin, which is nice to see. He hasn't had a very big role. We get a lot more of Talia, which is nice to see because she's been absent for a serious amount of this season. And we get Londo and Lanier, and I always love aliens-only pairings, especially if it's two aliens who are on such a vastly opposite side of basically everything. So these things are really what elevates everything a lot for me. So maybe, Meike, you have a favorite here of which of the three sort of main plot lines you want to start talking about.
I would say let's start with Londo and Lanier, because I think this is more disconnected to the other parts that at some point intervene with each other.
That is certainly true. And we open up this plot with Londo having a fairly serious call with somebody back home, a fairly high official, I would imagine, who talks about how the Emperor and the Centaurum are concerned that the Republic needs to invest more efforts into their relations with other species, which I think is interesting insofar as we've seen that the Centauri have been kind of on this slow decline, haven't really been interacting with the rest of the universe that much anymore. And now it seems there is actually people back home trying to change that, which might be a very good sign. Maybe this is a sign of better things to come for them. Who knows? It would be interesting to see Londo struggling with that, with like the Republic moving on from its weird nostalgia trip and him not being able to do that. But Londo is Londo, so for him this means I'm gonna grab the next alien that I see and drag him into the casino, because that's where I make my improved relationships. And yeah.
We might add there that it's not the casino he's going straight first, because he's going, I think this is a strip club or some kind of thing.
Yes.
Whatever it is called at a B5, and in the future, maybe there's some other way of calling it. But I really had a big laugh when, the dancer dropped her clothing and Lanier's look like, what am I seeing here?
It's not even amazement, it's just astonishment that such a thing exists and what it means.
Yes. And I have to say, Lanier was so cute in this episode. Really warmed up to him. He's not on the same level as Veer, but he's working his way there, I would say.
I think we just need to get him out a little bit more to really have more opportunities for him to shine. But no, Lanier in this episode.
A few more motorcycle rides, maybe.
Yes. But it's great that you mentioned this, because this pairing works so well for me, because for both of these characters, it's been very well established how they function. That Londo really shines when he is in the strip clubs, bars, and casinos of the station. That's well established, of course. But then also that Lanier is easily convinced to do anything as long as you can sort of get him on the trip. This will teach you about culture and this will teach you about history. And even though Londo clearly is setting him up there a little bit, I think for Lanier that isn't even a problem, because legitimately he will take a lot of things about Centauri culture away from this. Maybe not the ones that Londo intended to, but certainly something.
Yeah, because he is confronted with things he usually, I think, wouldn't interact with or get a connection with. Because, well, to a certain degree, Lando is right. There is so much you can learn from books, but there's a limit to it. And the difference to real experience. Though I like this two paths two versions of very different perspectives that connect there.
Yes, and we've talked before ourselves about how a big important part of this station is living together and not just having the high diplomacy going on. So legitimately for Lennier to be more involved in this through Londo is also something that probably Delenn couldn't provide for him. Like, she is not in a position to really do that. She has too many high things to do, especially now more than ever with her new calling at the Grey Council. So yeah, it's great that Lennier is open for these kinds of experiences.
Yes, and especially when then it goes to the casino, this is like, I mean, the first time he still in the strip club where Lennier mentions, yeah, and then in my year something I started working on, and Lando's like, what? Did my ears hear there? Oh, I can do something with this, and then just drags the poor boy into the casino. And even though Lando is going there with the intention, okay, I am getting money out of this, shortly later you see that he's actually regretting getting Lennier there.
He made a huge mistake, but you mentioned how Lennier is the most adorable in this episode, and the fact that Lennier is so unshakable in his enthusiasm about everything is a big part of that. He is so happy to talk to somebody about his linguistic studies and everything else that he did. And Londo regrets it immediately until he sees an opportunity in a very Centauri fashion.
Though I'm rather interested in this enthusiasm of Lennier of talking about what he studied and everything. Is it just, let's say, a normal character trait, or is this something triggered through maybe something like loneliness and this darker part? That would be something I would be interested to know where this comes from.
And maybe there is actually a little bit of hint at larger world building here, because obviously humans are right at home on Babylon 5. It's a human station after all. Londo and Centauri are plentiful and very happy on Babylon 5 because we see them in the casino and everything. A lot of the other alien species have established something like the Mutai. They are obviously very much at home. And even for the Narn, who have been, a little bit of the bad guys in conquering territories and such, so you would imagine they're a little bit on the outside, but even they have a thriving religious community on the station, as we've seen with Jakar leading that. How often do you see just random Mbari around on the station? Not so much, which makes sense because only one of their castes is really interacting with the rest of the universe at all, as far as we know. And even then, there is not that particularly many of them because they were just recently at war with humanity. So out of all the ambassadorial advisors, Lennier is probably the one who is on the station with Delenn and not much of a Minbari community beyond that. And we see that this is legitimately something, maybe even dangerous when he has to remind Londo, oh, by the way, if we Minbari drink at a human bar and get some alcohol, we go into a violent frenzy, and that is not something that we can risk. So there are these small differences we just see. It would probably help this guy a lot if there was a Minbari place that he can go to, and there might just not be.
Since I dropped Veer earlier and you the term enthusiasm, I would love to see Lennier and Veer together.
That would
and when they're both in their enthusiastic mood, and oh my god, I think they would be like kids in a candy store. I think they would have or could have their best time of their life together.
In general, this, but also Lennier and Veer and Natoth together, I could even imagine, because all of them have this they are all aides to somebody who is sometimes just super busy and making odd choices and talking about the great designs of their government. And these are just normal people that try to live their daily lives. I can see some energy there.
Though I have to say, I would see Natov a bit standing to the side, like, okay, I'm watching these two kids, because she appears to be a bit more of a grown-up character. If you get what I want to say.
No, now that you mention that, that's actually true.
Because Veer and Linnea, they have this childlike characteristic, this untouched, help me. I'm
this youthful energy that they bring to the table.
I'm sorry. I have a problem with the word youthful since watching the anime Naruto.
Innocent, maybe we can take
innocent. Innocent. Yes. That's a good term. Innocent.
I mean, maybe this is a really deep lore pull that we are managing here, where it's like maybe this is a message how the Narn are on this devastated world, so they have to grow up so fast, so they don't really bring this innocence to the table anymore. Maybe we are reading too far into it, but it's definitely true that there is a difference there. There is a difference there, certainly.
But still, I still can see these three together, and like the two boys doing their thing and Natov standing in the side, and they're still alive. Okay, I can.
Yeah, she's the one that makes sure that nobody gives Linnea the actual alcoholic drink, and then everything's gonna be fine. Then we see that once again, human culture is something that aliens interact with. So Londo talks about poker, the very famous human game that is played, which I love that pronunciation for him. Thoughts on the poker game, and also the first time of full frontal nudity that we get in this show.
Well, I have to admit, I was a bit off when they were playing, because I'm so not interested in these kind of things. It's like, I mean, if you give me someone gambling, this is like looking sports for me. It's super boring. Like if I don't know someone there participating, or if it's something I would really love to do myself, then there's just a switch in my head that's just I'm somewhere else than usually.
You don't bring that enthusiasm that Linnea has for absolutely everything.
No. This is another point where I just would draw out a book and you can have fun. Just don't bother me and let me read my stuff here. Though when Lando was starting to cheat, I was like, okay, is this a part of his body, or did he just acquire a really weird pet? And when it goes towards the ending of their plot, I was like, I don't think I really wanted to have an answer for this.
I just want to highlight that just last episode, you were saying you wish there were less humanoid aliens there. And here you go. Here you have a very non-human part of anatomy about Centauri. They are much stranger, much closer to the Hana from Mass Effect than you ever thought. Isn't that a big relief?
Yes and no. I mean, this is like watching Doctor Who and getting the information, oh, Doctor Who has two hearts. It's something you usually, it's not something you see, it's not something experience in the perception of the figure, therefore it is, again,
a bit of a cop-out, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I kind of found this funny, but on the other hand, it's like, well, why are you dressing? I mean, if they had like this, here Lando's showing off this statue. If they were like dressing in a way that these tentacles were shown all the time or somewhere, then I would say, okay, I can work with this because that's different again. But on the other hand, why have these? I mean, what is I kind of doubt that this is like I don't know. Every part of your body has some sort of job to do. So
I mean, given their job, like he explains later on, how this is a lot about the god slash goddess of God. Now I'm missing the term.
passion.
Yes, passion and reproduction and all that. It makes sense that the tentacles aren't shown off permanently. I guess in that in that case, but yeah, in terms of introducing alien anatomy, it's a little bit of a cheap explanation of getting around the makeup.
This is one thing, and on the other hand, this connection of we have tentacles, and then we have the goddess of passion, and this is connected to each other. It's like, oh gee, did you watch some Japanese porn or
somebody inserted their fetish into this? Like, this is not something that you come up with without some back thoughts. But once again, I find it amazing how quickly Linnea just flees this situation upon being confronted with all of this. And it's just, I don't know, there's something sweet about how Linnea plays the very innocent side for most of this, but then when it comes to protecting Londo's honor, he's also like taking things rather seriously, and I enjoy that part of it a lot as sort of a small resolution to how the interaction actually went.
Yes, I'm not really sure what to take of Lanier's saying that it's an honor to save someone else's face, which I think is something nice to have established in a society. On the other hand, it kind of feels like it lessens the impact of his action. Because it's something, I don't know, like
it's not really a selfless act at this point anymore.
Yes,
right?
yes, it's not driven from him as a person, as a character trait or anything, but it's because it's a society convention.
Yeah.
And therefore, I think it kind of lessens the impact or the importance of this action.
I think
to me,
at the very least, when we are talking about the personal relationship between Londo and Linnea, that kind of suffers from that.
Yes.
What I do think is interesting about this, that it is once again an example of Babylon 5 actually working as intended, because we've learned about the Minbari before that honor is a big thing about them. Like Nerun was all about, my clan should not be dishonored, we want to honor the memory of this guy, and so on and so forth. This is even what Dylan threatened him with, right? We will be dishonored for all future generations. And we also learned that this is for the Centauri the most important thing, the masks you wear, the importance that you have. So you look at Linnea and Londo, and they're obviously very different from each other. You look at the Minbari and the Centauri, and it's very hard to imagine at first glance what are their intersecting interests. Where do they actually have a common ground? And this idea, for both of these cultures, saving face is crucially important. They both have this understanding of personal honor and a societal obligation to protect that. Suddenly, that's a big cultural similarity that you can then work from. So I feel like on a personal level, it cheapens Linea's actions a little bit, but on the other hand, I see, but looking at this as a diplomatic interaction between two peoples, this is hugely valuable because we've now learned about a bridge between these two that hasn't existed before.
Okay, on the other hand, if you say this, of course, this interaction you could interpret it as I project the honor of my people on someone who is from a different species. So I include you in my cultural beliefs. I include you in my way of living. Which is also, again, a connection part that fits in with the idea of Babylon 5.
But that would also be then a much more personal decision, right? Like protecting somebody else's honor, that is pre-programmed in Minbari society, but I would guarantee you that a member of the warrior caste that we've seen so far wouldn't extend that to another member of another species necessarily, but Linnea does. So maybe there's actually more of a personal decision in there than at first glance is apparent.
Yeah, if you like now, if you have receive a different perspective, you can get to this point, I think. Yeah.
Okay. I think that is more or less it on that front, like
Yes.
that. We learn a little bit about these two, and I think the biggest takeaway is we need a meeting between Linear and Veer and see how that will play out. In general, more. I mean, it's Christmas. We can kind of write a wish list of what we hope the new year and season 2 brings. More screen time for the aides probably is pretty high up on that list, I would imagine, right? Like
Yes.
that is something that we can all agree on. All
Sorry.
right. Maybe the underground clinic. I think this is the next thing that kind of naturally comes up. And where do you want to start here? Maybe with Dr. Franklin, because it's been a little while since we spent a lot of time with him, and if I remember correctly, where last we left off, he wasn't in a good place, like at all.
Yeah, I really liked to see that he is doing this kind of work with this free clinic, or like Ivanova calls it, the unauthorized illegal clinic. And yes, to some degree, I certainly understand her, though I really like that she is saying something along the lines of, okay, if you do this, please keep me informed that if I'm in this shit, then let's make it properly together from the start.
Yes.
And yeah, I like this idea of him doing kind of charity work there, which is obviously much needed, but it also fits to his character considering what he has done in the past to save someone's life. Therefore, I like this turn. Well, I'm not sure if you could call it a turn of events, but this situation coming up here.
I mean, if you'd call it a turn, I wonder how much of a new development this is, but if it's literally him sitting down after the events of Believers and really thinking, okay, I tried to go my own way and it went horribly wrong, so if I go my own way again, I need to do this like outside of MedLab. I need to go somewhere where the help is really needed. I could actually imagine that this is his version of sort of reconsidering things and trying something new, not trying to force his way in his official capacity, but outside of that, because last time it massively backfired. I could arrive at that conclusion somehow.
Yes, but also this clinic, there is, let's say the disposition is completely different because the people come because they want help.
Yes.
They're on their free will, and it's not like he is projecting or forcing his help on others.
Yes.
Therefore, he has maybe some kind of found his way to keep doing what he wants to do, but in a less oppressive way.
Yeah, I mean, in Believers, he talked about the people that come to me want my help. They want me to play God. And, you know, in his capacity as chief medical officer, that isn't necessarily true, because it's just people being assigned there, being sent there necessarily, because they have nowhere else to go. If he has his own little clinic where the people come completely out of their own volition, he is much more in this comfortable position where he can be sure that the people that come there really trust him and really want to do this. So definitely a better place for him. Although I will say the fact that he doesn't tell anybody about this and Ivanova kind of scolds him for it still speaks to his idea of he wants to do things alone, on his own terms, and he's not really good at asking for help or just, you know, letting people know who are inadvertently involved in things.
He wants to do it his way.
Yeah.
I would summarize it, because that also fits rather well to the supposed fraud doctor. He confronts, I think Laura is the older lady's name.
Oh, now let me quickly confirm that. Yes, Laura Rosen.
With this alien technology, healing people where he doesn't know how does it work. Of course, I can understand him to a certain point, because technically it's possible that she's doing damage and maybe not even helping the people. And well, to some degree, she is damaging, but her own life. Also, I found it rather impressive considering her situation of being terminal sick and still saying, okay, I take the time I have left and do something good. Which is also something not necessarily regular people do when they get to know, okay, I have little time left. I would say most people would go on an ego trip, like, okay, I have to use the time I have left for doing everything I missed so far.
Yeah.
I mean, to a certain degree, I understand that, and I think to a certain degree this is totally legit. But going this completely different way of using your time for others, this is something I think is really impressive, especially in this situation. And after experience what she experienced with her job and everything.
I hate to do this, but I would, for a short moment, play the devil's advocate here.
Of course you do. Otherwise, you wouldn't sit here with me.
Exactly. This is what keeps discussions going. No, I think there is certainly an extremely impressive sacrifice that she is doing. But I also think she gets this terminal illness and she decides she now invests all the time she has left helping people in the way that she always wanted to help people, pursuing her dream of her profession of healing people, which is very selfless, but between doing this and going on an ego trip, ticking off your bucket list, there is a point to be made that, you could also decide to go home and be with your family, be with the daughter that you have, and give her the love that she needs, because I would argue this daughter doesn't need a mother who dives even deeper into work after getting a terminal illness. And that is something that we see in real life, that sometimes people just push forward with their profession no matter what and don't actually deal with the fact that maybe my family really needs me now. Maybe this daughter isn't quite ready to get rid of her mother, to lose her mother, so maybe investing much more time into this and putting your own ambitions of being the best doctor there ever was secondary might be the more productive thing here. Which isn't to say, she's a bad person and she should have done something different. But I think it is important to notice here that even what she's doing is super altruistic. It's still extremely focused on the work, which is also what basically cost her license in the first place. And the only reason I mention this so far is because in that regard, she reminds me a lot of Franklin himself. He seems like exactly the kind of person you would spend his very last moments being the best doctor there ever is, but completely neglecting the fact that maybe there's a family that really needs him.
This is also a part of why I said he's doing it his way, because this is rather well connected to the way Laura is handling it here, because she is doing it her way.
Yeah.
Also, of course, I also would see it your way, that it would be a good choice to make to spend some time with your child. The problem I have here is that obviously we have a rather loving daughter, and that Laura loves her child also, but I think there's just a few information about their family connection, how their family works, missing. I don't know how to say this.
To really bring home the impact of that relationship, maybe?
No, the problem I have is that just because you have a child, you don't necessarily, or because you have a mother or a father or siblings or any kind of or part of your biological family, you don't necessarily have a connection to these people.
Of course.
And especially not in a way of that it's important for you to be with these people. And therefore, I don't know how I should think of this family, because the only information we have, or one of the very few we get, is that the daughter is telling Franklin how that she's happy that her mother is not in this deep hole of depression or whatever it is, or desperation she experienced before. And even if you say, why isn't she spending time with her child? Honestly, if there was not a kind of connection where the daughter says, I want this, I need this, and really is just really happy that her mother is not depressed, because this is something that can really put yourself down and trigger you far more than anything else, this could be perfectly fine for the kind of connection they have. I'm not sure how to better explain this.
I think this is perfectly well put, that this is, there isn't really universal rules about this, right? It is very much dependent on the kind of people involved, the kind of relationship that they have. And I mean, by all accounts, from what we hear from her daughter here, this is the best case scenario. This is what she would want for the mother, and vice versa.
Yes, and on the other hand, just because the one feels this way doesn't have to be for the other person. And because you yourself think maybe a mother is supposed to do this, a father is supposed to do this, a child is supposed to do this. This isn't universal, translatable to every family. There are times where it's even better to break off any connection or contact. Therefore, it doesn't feel for me like there is some sort of problem between the mother and her child. Therefore, I don't think here your statement wouldn't apply really, at least not to me. If you see it different, that's perfectly fine, but I don't see it here.
No, that's perfectly valid. Should we talk about Franklin's reaction to this then for a moment? Because you already mentioned allegedly a fraudulent doctor. Like, he reacts very adversarial at first glance, I would say, where he is very clearly very convinced that she's a quack who is selling some sort of remedy that is not actually working. And I'm curious to see like how justified you think he is in his reaction, because I'm kind of two minds here. On the one hand, I can definitely see that in a place like down below, snake oil salesmen exist and are a massive problem. And we know that even in real life, like, people will make a living of fortune readings and fraudulent miracles they can perform, and all these kinds of things that are proven and proven again to be basically scams that target the most vulnerable people. That being said, Franklin remains fairly antagonistic about the whole thing, even after learning that there is no money involved here. People aren't obligated to sell anything, and people willingly go there. And especially, like we just talked about, he is in a volunteering clinic where people just go if they want to go there. If she is doing the same thing, who is he to say that this can't be something that exists?
I certainly agree with everything you said. I think in one way I can understand him, that being scared that someone is doing a scam there, because it kind of feels a bit like his job, because it's his kind of proficiency, his work, and if others doing the same thing are harming their patients, of course, he's put in a position where he should act, or is supposed to act. And I don't know or we don't know enough about his past, but maybe there are a lot of, or he experienced, I mean, we already know he traveled a lot. Maybe he experienced people abusing these kind of things that they say, oh yeah, we have here some alien stuff that will heal you. Though this not paying thing, or this pay what you want to pay or what you can pay, or maybe even not paying, but hey, you have like, I don't know, like in early times it would here you can have like a chicken or maybe
just barter for it,
or I baked you a cake for this, something like that. Feels rather utopic, because if you think like if you are in the position of you people of everything, it feels in a world that is driven with money, with power, with corruption, rather alien, because that is usually something that is not happening. Therefore, I can understand his skepticism. And I think it's a good thing that he is trying to validate, is she doing something good to the people, or is she doing something bad to the people? Though I think this is a bit fuck. Though I think this is a bit strong to say, is it good, is it bad? Because if there are people that are sick and there is no way of helping them in a medical way, giving someone hope can be equally powerful in this desperate moment. But I think the action itself is okay, even good thing to do in his position, though I don't like the way he is acting, because it's again this a lot of, I know what I'm doing, and you are I'm sure you're a fraud. This is too good to be. It's like there's no openness for different paths, different options. And I mean, he is literally in a space station with aliens and everything, that he's not even imagining that there are techniques, there are developments from other species that are working, that he doesn't understand immediately. It is a bit arrogant, I think.
I think you put it very well there, where there are certainly absolutely good reasons why he should be as skeptical as he is. Even if we say he should understand that there is technology that he maybe isn't aware of, it's been not that long ago that he was confronted with alien artifacts converting somebody into a talking, walking super weapon that threatened the entire station. So even then he could say, well, if it's an alien artifact that can really do this, we should study it first, because I've seen these things go horribly wrong. But Franklin has this unique talent of pursuing really, really good causes in the most unlikable way possible. And this is where I also always stumble in this episode, where it feels very much like when he's accusing her of being a quack, he's not doing this out of a concern about the general healthcare of the station or for the people there. It feels much more he is personally insulted that he came up with this great idea for a charitable clinic, and now somebody else is doing it and better than he can. And that it seems like he is more personally attacked by this than anything else. And that doesn't help his case here. And so it's how I feel very often with Franklin so far, that he has very good reasons to act the way he does. He's just very bad at articulating that in a way that doesn't make him come off as kind of an asshole about it. And then it's just kind of this. And like you mentioned, on top of that, there's also just this fact that he has absolutely no regard for anything that is outside his wheelhouse. Like talking about the psychological effects of this and how it might help people just to have a bit of hope in this place where there is none, isn't really something like that he would ever consider, especially from the perspective of this woman. It's not like she's coming in here and offering an alternative to the clinic. She's coming into down below and offering anything at all when there's usually nothing. So there's not really a reason for him to stand there and be like, there is a perfectly valid alternative that these people have and you are distracting them from it. Like, no, usually there isn't. And I don't know how many hours Franklin spends on his free clinic, but it's certainly not enough of them to treat the entire station. So it's not like he can really stand there and make that point. But still, to reiterate, he's still perfectly validated in insisting on studying what is actually going on, like he does until the very end. And I have to say, by the time this plot concludes, the way he does it also doesn't seem to as aggressive anymore. He is then much more open and understanding and sympathetic at that point as well.
Yeah, I think it's the change of his demeanor is just because he learned that, yeah, this actually helps, and what this woman is doing is so selfless. He can do shit against this. Whatever he is doing compared to her is nothing. Because, I mean, she is giving up her own life for others in the very word of itself. So, yeah, I think he got a bit of a lecture there for him too, and found someone he, to a certain degree, even looks up to.
Yes. And I think maybe this is the next step for him to learn, but I think so far there's still this moment where Franklin can be very antagonistic until he understands how things relate to himself and how some other people might be trying to pursue the same ideals but in a different way. And so far it is still at the stage where the world really needs to beat him over the head with that fact that it is possible to not be the chief medical officer and do good in this world, and he just needs to deal with that. Maybe this is the next step for his character to learn that, maybe you should assume not the worst in people at the very first glance, as hard as that might be sometimes, especially in his profession.
Yes, and I mean, on top of that, he had this varying interactions with the daughter, of being friendly, of being antagonistic, of being friendly again, to the point of does the dinner invitation still stand? So I hope that he learned a lesson from this interaction.
Yes.
But what I think is really different here, or do you want to add?
No, it's not that important.
Okay, because what differentiates Laura in a really big scale also from Franklin is what she says in the end, because this whole murder case, jumping forward, in the end she is considered not guilty and free to walk where she wants to. She still feels bad because she has taken a life. And her daughter is saying, like, hey, didn't you hear Mr. Garibaldi said you did you did the right thing? Where she corrects her daughter and says, I did the necessary thing that is not always the same as the right thing. And there I really have to say there was when she had me, because this is a differentiation not many people can do.
I think you hit the nail on the head with that one, where I think for me this shows that he is a character who has had a long journey from the loss of a medical license to this, and I think we see her here really internalizing this lesson that she had. I feel like using the stims like she did and performing operations was this perfect example of something where she was trying to do the right thing over and over, healing people, and completely lost sight of the necessary things. The fact that you need to give yourself enough time to sleep to be a functional human being to perform this job possibly. And now we see she has internalized this and also felt how weighty this decision sometimes can be in doing a necessary thing that wasn't necessarily the right one. I think this...
Yes, and in contrast to that, we have Franklin, who did the same thing, who did the right thing, or put the right thing over the necessary thing for his actions.
Who had this idealized version of what the right thing to do is and completely forgot sort of the necessities and to similarly disastrous results, even though for him the consequences weren't as severe, or at least not on a professional level. And we have kind of naturally arrived here at the intersection between the murder plot and this plot, so unless there is anything we want to talk about with Franklin on his own, I think we can rewind again to the beginning of the episode a little bit and talk about, I think it's Karl Müller, wasn't it Edward Müller? Again, the English version of a German name. I can't do this. It breaks my head. It's hot. It's just one of the most blatant examples of we need a bad guy for the episode. We don't have somebody with a British accent, so let's make him German. I'm positively amused about that. Once again,
thinking the whole time, the actor, where did I have seen him? Because his face seemed kind of familiar. I have no idea where I could have seen him or if I'm messing things up.
His name is Mark Rolston.
I'm really bad with names.
I will look. I will just very briefly look at this IMDb and see if he has been. He was in Aliens. He was in Shawshank Redemption, Rush Hour, The Departed.
In which Alien part?
The second.
Oh, I know. I think I know who he was. I think he was the I think that he was the military guy who went who was the I don't know the position if he was a captain, commander, or anything, the highest position on the ship, and it was his first time in space or something like that. I think that was this guy. That would be fitting for the face.
Just to get people's Private Drake is the name of his role in.
No. Yes. Wait, Private Drake. Oh no, that wasn't the guy. Okay, I remember now who was it. He and I remember the name of the woman. She was called Vasquez.
Mm-hmm.
And they were having like this big guns that were like with a mechanical arm bound to their body or something. Now I remember. I knew.
We have to watch Aliens at some point together. This would be very good. He has been in very, very many things, and if I see this correctly, he is still very active in acting, which is very nice to see. He was in Ahsoka recently, so still even in science fiction circles active, which is very nice to see. And he did some video game voices, including some Star Trek games. Nice things.
But I'm really happy now that I knew his face.
You him from.
Yeah, usually I have this friend of mine. She's like, I don't know, especially with voices. It's like, okay, listen to this voice and tell me where I have heard this voice before. And she's like, oh yeah, this. And
that is great.
With a lot of things, this is when even with faces, and usually she is the one I turn to and say, come on, tell me why do I know this person?
Fix this knot in my head. I can't do it on my own.
And because it's really unsatisfying, because all the time I'm like,
of course.
Where do I have the connection? Now I'm happy. Okay. After this outburst,
we can confidently say now, Karl Müller wasn't his most in-depth role that he got to play. I feel like this is, if ever I've seen an evil bad guy character on the show, this is him. If you don't,
so rather short in appearance and not with much of an impact.
Really,
for me it was just some background bad guy.
Okay.
The only thing that stood out to me was the mental breakdown he gave Talia, but on the other hands, it was just Okay, random guy. Will
Interesting.
someone shoot him finally, please?
At least in my in my remembering the show, he's always one of the more memorable criminals that we get on the show. But to be fair, there's not that many like just generic criminal murderers on the show, so maybe it's just that. But okay, he did leave a massive impact on you. If you wouldn't mind, maybe we can have, perhaps shortly, perhaps not, the whole capital punishment debate now in terms of real life before we go into what the show actually does with it, because I feel like then we can kind of untangle this a little bit.
Yeah, well, I have to say, I don't think that, or at least I feel like there's not much happening. The only interesting parts for me was like, yeah, his face, where did I seen it before, and happy to see the judge, I think, is the same we've seen before.
Yes, the ombudsman
Just with a bit more hair in the face.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's kind of like it, and that he's like a serial killer that up until now no one obviously recognized except for Garibaldi with his spider sense tingling and Talia finally confirming it. But that's about it for me.
No, I think you're completely right. No, I just meant, obviously we have this topic of death penalty in this episode. Maybe let's touch on, or maybe I will try to touch on that for a second before we go into the telepathic part of all this, because I think that's more interesting. No, the reason this stands out to me is just because I've listened now and read through a few different discussions on capital punishment surrounding the show based on this episode, and Carl Mueller is sort of a setup for the best case scenario. Like, he's a very obviously guilty bad guy. And what that means is that in discussions about capital punishment, they usually now revolve around this scenario. You have a guy who is 100% guilty, and is it moral to kill him or not for his deeds? And then people can have pros and cons about this. Should punishment be just about retribution? Should it just be about should it attempt to rehabilitate somebody or not? And that is then the back and forth discussion about should capital punishment be a thing or not, which is fine, and there's completely valid arguments to have had about this. But what I always find a little bit odd, as somebody coming from a place where capital punishment isn't a thing, is that this isn't the discussion you have when you decide whether or not it's a good idea to give your government the ability to kill people. That should happen a lot earlier with the question, do you have a way of killing people that is reliable and doesn't devolve into horrible torture accidentally? And do you have a legal system that ensures that the people that are on death row are these overly evil, 100% guilty serial killers? And this is where I often have a problem connecting with discussions about the death penalty, because these two factors are often not really taken into account, but are the core issues that I would be concerned with as somebody coming from a place where for exactly those reasons capital punishment isn't practiced anymore. Whether or not it's moral to kill a convicted murderer who is 100% guilty isn't a question that I have to answer, because I can always just have to answer the question beforehand. Can I guarantee that everybody that is going to receive this punishment is actually going to be guilty? And the answer is always going to be no, as long as you have an imperfect justice system. So most of the discussions that I hear having had about this episode are kind of moot because of that. And that is not to say to invalidate people's opinions that have this about it. It's just why for me it's a little bit alien, because I never get to this point where it becomes this very abstract philosophical issue about the morality of life and death. It's usually just hung up on much more practical terms of, well, you don't have a way to actually deal with, like, enact this punishment in a reliable way, so why are you talking about it? That's just my little soapbox rant about all this that I wanted to get out of the way.
I totally agree on this. I mean, how many people are, I don't know if it's really an often appearing case that people that are on the death row that someone is coming around with, I have new evidence, we need to stop this, we need to, a new trial and everything. But yeah, honestly, I don't think you can have 100% accuracy if someone is guilty or not. There's always like, even if it's just 1%, that doesn't matter. That's just statistic. But there is a chance that the one you have is wrong, that the one is maybe pushed in this position through others by being threatening the family, or even just something stupid like someone messed with the evidence even without wanting to, like accidentally mixing up some DNA samples or stuff like that. You can't be sure on a 100% that someone is guilty. That's my opinion, because we're all human. We all make mistakes. And to believe in a perfect system is the most stupid thing I think one can do.
And I think there you hit exactly the point that I was trying to make in far more words, is this idea the capital punishment is a very absolute judgment and very absolute power that you give a government that kind of presupposes a perfect system. And even if it's just symbolically there, that feels like a problematic thing to do. And then just talk about it in more practical terms, you can also just look at the list of countries still enacting the capital punishment and look at the kinds of regimes that these are usually. And they don't tend to be very liberal democracies that uphold any of the values that we hold dear. So at some point you also just kind of have to question, like, I do this, and in what kind of company am I, and do I really want this? Which doesn't even touch on the questions of, I still see people making an argument how the capital punishment is necessary to uphold law and order, when the rest of the world very clearly manages to do that. So it's just, yeah, in some aspects it feels very foreign to me.
Yeah, the thing I thought when I think even the first time this came onto me about the necessity of killing someone in accordance of law. I think this is rather stupid in many ways. But now I forgot what I wanted to say in the middle of the sentence. Let me start again when I find
Sure.
my idea. What did I want to say? I have a few other thoughts in my head, but that's not what I wanted to say. Can you repeat what you said? Maybe.
Just that it's about what company you find yourself in, right? Like, what countries have this system of the state needs to be able to kill somebody, and those don't tend to be the liberal democracies.
Yes, to uphold, that was my keyword. Okay. The thing to me is that I think that a lot of people do not necessarily understand what it means to be locked away for some time and cut off society and the people you care about. I mean, the problem, of course, is what kind of prison you are in. But just the concept of cutting you away from society, if you think about, depending how social you are, if you are an introvert, it's easier to cut off away from society. But if you stay like in your room with nothing to do, just like think of it like you're in your bedroom. You lock yourself a whole day in your bedroom without something to read, without something to watch, without something to do. And all you get to eat is like a really plain plain stuff, like maybe think of for breakfast and dinner, like a bread with maybe a slice of cheese or something. You just can drink water, and for lunch you also get rather plain thing to eat. And before you all do this, you have just certain times for you to go to a bathroom or something like that. That would be the most radical thing, of course. And if you do this for a whole day without doing anything, again, like no reading, no phone, no watching TV or hanging on your PC, the only person maybe who would survive this day without any problems are those that have no problem with sleeping a whole day, or those who would say like, okay, I just do some sports in my bedroom then. But these are, like, I would say, exceptions. And if you would think of having this for a longer time, for days, for weeks, for months, for years, this is not a pleasant situation. But if you are locked away for 25 years and then you come out, the world will be a different one. You will no longer understand what people are doing, what is important, what is interesting. There's no longer a life out there for you the way you do it before these 25 years. And I think this is something people really, really underestimate, how much this does to you personally, to your life. And therefore, I do not understand anyone who's saying, no, we need the death for the ultimate thing there.
And I mean, just to put a nice little and very controversial bow on this, is the reason I think it's important for us to talk about this here is just to showcase a little bit our perspective on the show. Because for us, naturally looking at this episode now, what this show is telling us is that the understanding of human rights and morality and what the justice system can do in Earth Force and in Earth Alliance has taken a massive step back. Like, for me to watch this show and to imagine, okay, so there is a society now in the future that goes to space that has reinstated the death penalty, means that basically for the entire length of my country's existence as the Federal Republic, all of this has to be rolled back. Our constitution needs to be completely revamped and rewritten, and certain sections protecting human rights need to be cut out of that. So this is a massive thing that has happened. Whereas as a US audience, I can watch this episode and basically see, okay, so the justice system has stayed roughly the same. And these are two very different perspectives on Earth Force to take here. And, you know, you talk about the things of confinement, you know, it's... I venture to guess, to say this here, like we're talking about the capital punishment, but, you know, with the US, we're also looking at a justice system that widely practices solitary confinement to a point where it has been, by the United Nations, indicted as a torture that is being abused in this justice system. So it's just, as uncomfortable that is saying, for me to watch an American show that is just showcasing a continuation of the American justice system as it exists in the 90s, as somebody from any other country in the world, basically, it's a massive step back that I have to see now. And this will mean that with this in mind, my perception of this is going to be slightly different than maybe what the creators of the show intended. And that's just important to move forward, because I can tell you right now, this isn't the last time in the show that we deal with the justice system of Earth Alliance, and it will mean that we are sort of confronted with this dissonance every time again. Okay, not that there is a lot more to say about this, but just to get this chunk out of the way. And I will cut it together in a way that it is as succinct as possible, but yeah, I just felt like as the first big instance of this happening in the show, it's good to have talked about this for once, just so that we are clear on that kind of stuff.
Yeah, well, from one extreme to another, because I think the complete, I'm not sure how to say this, is it a destruction of personality? Is it the deletion, to delete the personality of someone, I'm not really sure this is a better way of doing things.
No.
I mean, I can sort of get to the thinking there, because it makes of a problematic person someone you can integrate back into society. But on the other hand, you can technically do anything with this new personality, and therefore you can make him work the way you want to. You can make him do positive things, of course, but it kind of has this aftertaste of a rather capitalistic thinking to me. This is like efficiency. It's not about doing something to really reintegrate this person, but to change him. And yeah.
And this is the fun part, because now, having left the practicalities of this kind of punishment behind, we could talk about the philosophy of it. And that's the fun part of it, of course. And maybe let's split this into one or two different questions. One, I certainly agree with you that the death of personality, as it's advertised here in this show, seems very much grown from, once again, a very American mindset of the prison system needs to be efficient and profitable. And having the warm body still around to do work in terms of just money, that is the more profitable way of doing that. The question we can answer beforehand, though, is it a meaningful difference from the death penalty from the perspective of the convicted? And I don't know how you feel about this, but at least in my mind, basically erasing somebody's personality, including memories and everything, is the death of that person. I don't really care how long the organs continue running around by that. That person is gone. And there is not really anything beyond that. I've seen arguments being made along the lines of, well, there's still an intangible soul beyond that continues on. Fine, we can have discussions about that.
So much soul is there left if you tinker with the personality. I mean, okay, this is this discussion, or basic discussion, what is a soul? But I think, who we are is shaped through our memories, through our experience in life. And if you take all this away, you're basically, if you wouldn't give him new memories, who would this person be? I would think of it that he would be back in the state of a baby, that he would have to relearn how the social interaction is working, how maybe even back to the point of that he has to learn how to walk again. So I don't think this is in any way different than killing the person in the form of the body, because there is nothing left of this person. And practically, I would think that it's, you're building then we take a bit of this and that bit of this, and let's make someone that we can use in society in whatever we need this in. And I don't think this is much of a difference, because the person is gone and there is no redemption part there. There is no time there to sit in the consequences of your actions.
Yeah. From the perspective of the convicted, it's actually a pretty easy way to get out of it, right? You just cease to exist. You don't have to spend the 25 years actually sitting with whatever you've done and perhaps even coming to regret it or something like that. But this is also where I feel like it becomes more questionable than a simple death penalty, because if you do recognize that erasing somebody's personality is equivalent to killing that person, disrupts this continuity, well, what do you say then about the person who is created after the erasure and is now sent to do menial work to repay debt for the society that was created by a dead personality by now. Like, it feels like if you are actually saying the death of personality is equivalent for us to the death penalty and this is why we accept it, okay, but then how can you put that person after death to work and not consider that this is a new person now that is being punished for a completely unrelated crime? Like, I feel like to make this specific kind of punishment work, it always has this internal contradiction where either it is a death of personality and that's final, or you have this continuation and you can continue punishment. But this is kind of like, well, having the cake and eating it too. It's just everything.
Two things. First, I mean, there is a reason why, like, children aren't don't have the same standing in front of the law as an adult, because they have a different perception of the world. They can't grab the world in a sense an adult does, and therefore, if it feels like this is the same direction that you are going with the changed personality. This is no longer the person that convicted the crime.
And like you said, it's practically, they're gonna practically be on the mental level of a toddler. So it's also not like they could comprehend the crime that they are being punished for. There is not that frame of reference for that.
Yeah, which of course it goes back to the question, okay, what do you consider the reason for punishment? If you just say it's a punishment and I have to repay the ones who are on the other end of his actions, then okay, maybe, but I don't think this is the reason, or at least not the only reason, why you punish people. It's to uphold a structure and to give them time to rethink what they have done.
And it's really interesting because, and I don't think this is unintentional, I think this is what the show is legitimately also wanting to convey, is that the death of personality kind of fails at both kinds of reasons for punishment. If you are in the camp of saying punishment should be about vengeance, about, enacting on people the same that they did to society, which is, I would say, something that Garibaldi would adhere to, then you come to the same...
an eye.
Yeah, and then you come to the same argument that Garibaldi makes here. That's not as... Death of personality isn't as good as proper capital punishment. So that's not going to satisfy that reason of punishment, whether you agree or not or not. But if you're in the other camp and say punishment should be about rehabilitating somebody, then it's also useless, because you've erased the person that should be rehabilitated. You've just created a new one. So the only way that this is a successful punishment is in the purely monetary perspective of the government that can say, well, we've punished him kind of, and we've kind of rehabilitated him, but the important thing is the bank checks are the most balanced now, because he can do menial work now, which is, I would dare to say, the most dystopian portrayal of Earth Alliance that we've seen to this point, where it's really only the government and not any part of the population really benefiting from this approach.
And here, to get to the second part, what I wanted to say, recreating someone to do menial work really strongly reminds me of the beginning of zombie movies. Okay. Because there, the origin of zombies are in I want to say Hawaii, but I think that's wrong. But in this direction, it's from the voodoo.
So more Caribbean.
Exactly.
Okay.
This direction. And the point there is that it's the most horrible thing people can imagine in these cultures, because the soul kind of dies, but they can't get rest.
Yeah.
And in most of these early zombie movies, you have like this image of it's not the zombie in the sense of we as we know it now, that human eating brain eating cannibals. It's just a walking human with no soul. This creature can't talk and everything, but can be put to menial works like taking care of a field or stuff like that. This connection there is strongly with slavery and stuff like this. But the idea of all this feels really relatable to what is happening here in Babylon 5 with this change of personality, because you're killing off the original person and just transforming it into like a worker, like a bee in a hive, and to your likings.
I mean,
using them.
Slavery is an uncomfortable topic, but the right one to bring up here, because you kind of have to question, okay, how is it justified that the new personality that was created by the erasure of the old one has to do this menial work now? Like, is this guilt inherited in some way so that it needs to be paid off? But there's basically a justification by a perfectly new created personality now has no agency and arguably no rights in Earth Alliance anymore, or at least extremely limited ones. And, if these statues exist for people that have been their personality erased, that kind of puts you on a path where suddenly there are like loopholes in basic human rights, which is not something that you usually want to have.
And I mean, even no matter what you do, if you end up in prison or anything, you still have your human rights, or at least you should have your human rights. Everything else is
not ideal. But I mean, this is just bringing this up because it's like, even if you just follow through on the death penalty as such, even then I feel like it's less of a subversion of human rights, to the point where at least there is no new person created that doesn't carry that guilt and that has no justification to be treated that way anymore. So it's this is just why I'm highlighting, because it feels to me really, regardless of where on the question of capital punishment you land on, death of personality is never the ideal option for you. And this is what I feel confident in saying, because that's what the episode is saying. Like, nobody is happy with it. People that say it should be about rehabilitation, or people that say it should be about punishment.
Yeah, it's like I already said, it's a capitalistic approach there. The only one who's benefiting from this is the one where the work ends, the workforce ends up.
And we've talked so much about the convicted, which in this episode obviously is not really compelling character to identify with, but we do have Talia, who is pulled up in this, and who also, I would argue, has to suffer through quite a lot from this, because it's kind of this thing where society has decided that this kind of punishment is the thing now, and she's part of an organization that is necessary to facilitate that. So she's a commercial telepath, but she doesn't really have a choice in the matter to participate in this process and to partake in the mind of a serial killer, which by all accounts is an extremely violating process. So as happy as I am to see Talia a little bit more again, I feel really bad for her in this episode, because this is sort of the worst case scenario.
Yeah, I mean, to the job she has to do here, this is, I don't know if there's anything you could relate this to, because this person is it's not like this killing of his was an accident. It's like, I want to kill people.
Yes.
To the point, like, I have fun killing people. And to get into a mind of this without any harm to yourself, you have to be the same kind of person, I would presume, which is a really scary thing to think.
I mean, obviously, we don't really have a good equivalent for the telepathic aspect of this, but I mean, it's kind of like saying, okay, here's the serial killer. I need you to go into the cell with him and just humor him for the next 12 hours. Just completely get into his mind, like really get into his thought process and listen to all of this and reenact, method act through all of this with him, because that's what we need for the process to go right. And I feel like in real life, getting something like this done would be very hard to push through, because it's just a horrific experience that you're asking of somebody, and then you don't even have somebody dedicated as a job to this. It's more like, it's jury duty again, and this is what I have to do right now. And this is I think this is for me interesting, because it's the point where if I imagine Psychor as an organization and people being part of Psychor, this is where they can really turn against the government. This is where they can really get this this extreme demeanor that we saw in Bester and stuff, because they are being used and abused by the rest of humanity for these purposes, for morally questionable at best practices, and they are just little more than tools in this environment.
Yeah, on one hand, of course, they can get this 100% accuracy we want for, or we would say is a necessary thing to know, or to base this death penalty or personality death on. But on the other hand, it's like they see what's true, but what they are telling you is completely different. I mean, they could, if they want to, interact on their own and tell you, this is the most horrible person ever. This one killed thousands of people, and actually this one just was at the wrong place at the wrong time. So it's, again, you have one human telling you this is what is happening in his mind. And I think this is far too, there are far too many aspects to consider there as to say this is 100% accuracy we get there.
And I mean, the show acknowledges that insofar as saying what she sees isn't admissible in court. Like, she's not there to collect evidence for anything. She's only there to basically make sure all the personality gets out. But it tells us a lot about how telepathy works, because you're completely right. Of course, telepaths are also just human, so they will make mistakes, willingly or not. But then we see in this episode as well, it's not like the person being scanned has absolutely no control over there. We see very much that Carl in these sequences is toying around with Talia and showing her these visions of the choir and stuff, because, he is legitimately just insane and wants to revel in this glory one last time. But if that is possible, how hard would it be for somebody to, craft a halfway believable alibi? Or if you're somebody who is legitimately mentally unstable, how unstable would these visions be, to the point that they are also not this thing? Like, it's easy to look at telepathy and say we can get a 100% accurate picture, but at the same time, it's a 100% accurate picture of the human mind, which in and of itself is not very accurate at all. I mean, it's the same problem that you even have nowadays with witness testimony, where a witness can be 100% honest in what they believe they saw, but it's still just human perception that you're getting there. So it's inherently incredibly flawed, which I find just interesting that Babylon 5 introduces this science fiction element of telepathy, but also very much highlights all the limitations that has, and that it is not the get out of jail free card that you often imagine it might be at first glance.
Maybe something to compare Talia's position there would be in putting her with something like psychologist or what again? Oh, geez, I feel that it's late. I really have problems finding the right words in my brain.
Maybe a profile or something along that.
Profiler, yes, that was the word my brain didn't want to give me. I think the linguistic section over there is starting to close. But yeah, I think this is something that you could relate these positions or this position to the most. Though, on the other hand, I think this is still something with a lot of barrier between those doing this job and the actual mind.
That, and the crucial difference is, if you're a profiler, that's your job. If you're a psychologist, that's your job. Talia's job is making sure two companies don't lie at each other as they negotiate the drilling rights over an asteroid. This shouldn't be her job. She has not enough special training for this to properly do this, or at least actively tries to avoid it. So it's like you mentioned, it's the job of a profiler or psychologist, but with the qualification process of jury duty. So that's not great.
Yeah.
That being said, I do think she does get a few moments where obviously this is all horrifically distressing, and the show pulls little punches in showing that. At the same time, we also see that while Talia never really gets a chance to retaliate for any of this, she does hold her own. Like, she can perform these duties. She is certainly strong enough as a telepath for that. It's not about her like being too weak to deal with any of this. It's legitimately just psychologically strained that she very rightly so seeks to avoid. And I would say this is more than enough discussion of this episode. The last thing we can maybe talk about is the resolution, of course, where I think the machine that Laura uses is sort of the platonic ideal of what capital punishment wants to be, right? Like, it's always this talk about how can you repay for the crimes that you've done, and obviously you can't really repay life. Even taking a life, being repaid by that life being taken as well, isn't really creating equivalency. So the machine that can literally exchange life force is the closest thing you can get to that, and this is sort of what's being used to neatly resolve the plot in this episode. But I don't think that warrants a lot of discussion at this point. I think it's just, this interesting aspect that you already talked about of a sci-fi MacGuffin being put in a world that isn't utopian, that is more like ours, and therefore it is confronted with the situation in a way. Or was there anything about that resolution that you wanted to talk about still?
I think no, not really. I think it's the best solution in this case that could happen. Of course, I should put or want to put in there that, in generally speaking, that it's not necessarily the solution for this kind of ideal punishment in general for such a crime. Because those who would need the, let's say, retribution are the ones, usually the ones that are dead.
Yes.
And that machine, even though this machine cannot do a lot of things, I highly doubt that it can give back life in the sense of bringing someone back from the dead. Therefore, I don't think this 100% transfer is generally a solution. Maybe some putting it down, like a bit of life energy transferring would be something to do. But on the other hand, I can't really see how this reducing of the life, because that is what I would think would be the consequences of giving your life force to someone else, that you shorten your own life. I'm not sure how much different this is in killing someone, because in the end, you are the one who is taking the time in the sense of life. I'm not sure if I'm qualified to make a good distinction there. But I would be completely off with this 100 life transfer thing, because I don't see how much of a difference this is of killing someone, even though it does something good. But one good thing doesn't. It's again with the things you do for meaning good. The way you do it is also important.
And I think with this you touch on maybe the core takeaway that this episode offers. If we look at the history of death penalties, definitely a trend that is there is that you want to make it more advanced. Like, you don't want to take people's head off anymore manually, so you invent the guillotine. And when that is too public, then you invent something like the electric chair, which can happen in an enclosed room. And when that goes horribly wrong a few times, maybe, before then you have a lot of process of making hanging as efficient as possible. And then you move on to, something very modern like injections, which looks very medical and is not violent anymore. And then Babylon 5 sort of imagines, okay, if this is too uncomfortable, maybe we don't even do anything to the body. Maybe we just erase the mind, and that's very clinical and fine then. And now we arrive at this machine, which is, no life is being taken at all. Not even the mind is destroyed, it's just transferred to anything else. And it still feels uncomfortable and kind of points you in this direction. There are some problems in society, or some issues, some moral challenges, call it even, that you cannot solve by just making the technology better. It doesn't matter if you have a guillotine or a syringe or this sci-fi MacGuffin that is on Star Trek levels of technology. It's not going to help you resolve this issue of is the death penalty applicable or not. The moral problems of it just don't go away if it goes cleaner or more advanced. And I think this is true for a lot of ways that Babylon 5 portrays its future, where it always says, like, hey, here's these cool technologies, but if you want to deal with your justice systems, it's going to be a societal change that has to take place. It's going to be something that is not purely technological. And I think maybe this is just a good lesson to take forward. Now,
and I think you summarized this rather nicely. You can take a cookie for this.
I was trying to find like a good end word to absolve you from this discussion before it goes on much longer. And I would make a proposition, because Layla isn't with us today. And we definitely want to talk about the tapestry of especially Babylon Squared, but also the quality of mercy to some degree. But we are going to talk with her about these episodes again anyway. So given that it's already quite late, we've talked about both of these episodes a long time, maybe we just say we make the tapestry segment for both of these episodes separate when Layla is here and can help us talk about these again, because she's mentioned in previous episodes as well that these episodes are some that bring stuff up that she wants to talk about. So we just kill two birds with one stone and get off early now and have a proper tapestry then. How do you feel about that?
I think this is just fine. And also for our dear lurkers who are listening in, to make this not longer than we already made, I think.
I mean,
even though it's proudly Christmas when you hear or watch this.
That doesn't necessarily mean that people have more time, right? Like, probably even less so, because
even
they spend
less,
time
usually.
With festivities and such, or spending time on holidays just going away. But yeah, I guess then we just go straight to our outro. We had two very good questions for the audience, though, in Babylon Squared. Unfortunately, I've completely forgotten them.
Oh. Usually Layla is the one who is remembering those things.
Yes, we said it like in the episode. Worst case scenario, I will put them in text now on screen when I edit this episode, because then I will hear them again. But they were very good questions that naturally came up in the discussion of Babylon Squared, and for the life of me, I can't.
I can't remember also, but I already said my linguistic system is shutting down. Therefore, I would say when you're editing this, what we talked about, you just put in for YouTube watchers a screen and maybe a little voiceover for everyone else just listening in. But maybe I should take this as the opportunity to remind you of what is usually Layla's phrase, that it would be nice to watch us on YouTube, because here we are the cutest.
Yes, and as always, if you're not on YouTube already, You can find us there and on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, Amazon, and anywhere else you find your podcasts at the Third Age Podcast. And we will see you next week when we are talking about the finale of Season 1, the end of the first year of Babylon 5, and the end of 2023. This is going to be our big final discussions, shortly followed by our gala-style Season 1 retrospective.
Yeah, so far we hope you have, or at least had, a very Merry Christmas. We hope you are spending time with loved ones and have it warm and cozy with whatever it is that you like. And hope you enjoyed our episode just with the two of us, and hope you see us in the next episode.